Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from me as well. Let's get to it.
Unions say a £4 billion package to make mainstream schools more inclusive for special educational needs pupils is only setting up schools to fail.
Tourists are left stranded in Mexico by a wave of cartel violence sparked by the killing of its most wanted drug boss.
A British rising star from Hull beats the biggest names in Hollywood to the Best Actor prize at the BAFTAs. A great night for Robert Aramayo.
We're outside Royal Lodge with the officers investigating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor expected to continue their search of the former prince's home.
Now, 4 years of war in Ukraine and the fight has become attritional. We joined the unit using drones to defend their homeland.
Good morning. Thanks for choosing to spend your morning with us. A generational overhaul of special educational needs is being unveiled today. At the heart of it is a change in philosophy that children with additional needs should, where possible, be taught in mainstream rather than specialist schools.
To do that, the government is announcing £4 billion of funding to help schools adapt and become more inclusive for children who need extra support. But this is a complex issue. The number of children who receive SEND support is rising. And with that, so is the bill. Sky's Andrew Bakos has been speaking to parents about the changes.
For many parents, the special educational needs system is already a battle. And getting an educational healthcare plan, which is a legally binding package outlining the requirements for the child, is even more challenging. One mother whose child has an EHCP says the right to challenge decisions made by the local authority is essential.
So for us as a family, we have an EHCP. We're currently in the process of appealing 3 sections of the EHCP. If we didn't have that right, then our son would obviously be essentially forced to attend mainstream school, which is unsuitable.
She says when her son was placed in a mainstream school, the impact on the entire family was immediate and severe.
It was horrible. It was the worst time of our life. As a family, you know, it nearly broke us. Grayson went from being a really happy child to screaming and refusing to leave the house.
The government wants to change the SEND system to help ease the processes. They say the reforms will transform support for children across England, with £4 billion over 3 years to make mainstream schools more inclusive with targeted early interventions, of which £1.6 billion will focus solely on SEND.
And what I'm determined to make happen is that children get support earlier, they get it when they need it, and that we don't wait until things have reached crisis point.
Critics argue that although this is a step in the right direction, they say it's not enough.
And while £1.6 billion for frontline services is a substantial investment, we have to remember that this is stretched across tens of thousands of schools, colleges and early years providers, and it is over 3 years. So it will not be enough to fund increased staffing in each setting. We need to understand the plan for how this funding will change SEND support for the better.
The government say the reforms will create a more inclusive system where support is available in every school and community. But for families already navigating SEND provision, the white paper represents a pivotal moment, one that could reshape how children access education, support and specialist services for generations to come. Anjum Bakos, Sky News.
I think it's fair to say that the current state of affairs when it comes to special needs, additional needs, educational needs, disabilities is one of the most difficult problems the government sort out, right? Because they've got this multi-billion-pound black hole in councils that they are writing off. The number of children who qualify for this additional support is going up. And it's such a big deal, right? It's a huge, huge deal for parents, for children and for schools too. And I think there are still quite a lot of questions about how this is going to actually come through in the end. Because at the heart of it is this belief that the government has that they think that most children, where possible, should be educated in mainstream settings rather than specialist schools. And they've got additional money to try and help them do that, £4 billion in extra funding, more specialist teachers and specialist support. But if they want to do that, you know, I think a lot of schools will be quite worried about some of the impact of it too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the £4 billion obviously isn't that much. What they're also talking about a lot is making what money is spent more efficiently spent. And that's also at the heart of one of these aspects of making special educational needs children have their extra tuition in regular schools, is it means those schools should be therefore a bit more local to the children. Because one of the big costs that's been taxis, amazingly, for getting kids to the specialist schools, which may not have then been as close to where they lived.
Yes, and so also parents won't have the option to just choose whichever school they believe is the best one for their child, because I think, as you say, some of the bill of this is going up and there does need to be something done to try and bring it down. But, yeah, I think a lot of parents will be a little bit anxious today. The other thing to say as well is that currently schools get, you know, an EHCP, which to the kind of uninitiated is like a legal requirement, basically, for schools to give them certain help with their education that they need. So that could be anything up to like a full-time teaching assistant with them. And that's going to be reassessed. So I think there will be some people who think, hang on a minute, am I still going to be getting the level of support that I'm currently receiving?
I guess one of the things which, you know, understandably parents are going to be very anxious about this and seeing how it unfolds. One thing that hasn't happened is an attempt to clamp down or reduce the number of children who are being classified as needing this extra help, which I don't think had ever been really on the table, but when you just look at the charts of the increase, it was at least something that had been raised as, are we being, you know, too open, giving out too many of these classifications, and that's obviously one of the big reasons behind the cost. But the government's pretty clear on that. They say, no, these people need extra help, and we're not going to change that. We're just changing the way the help is administered.
There will be a bit of a sliding scale, though, as well. So some people with, I think what the government would say is like less severe additional needs, which could be people with ADHD, for example. Some children with autism might not get the full whack of the EHCP. But, I mean, look, there's loads of questions to put to the government later when they come on. And also the Children's Commissioner will be talking to as well about this. Coming up in about 5 or 10 minutes with Dame Rachel D'Souza. Now, tomorrow, the full-scale war in Ukraine will enter its 5th year. It's become a grinding test of attrition for both sides, where movement on the map is measured in metres, not miles. And it's, at its heart, is a small but pretty menacing weapon that's made daily life on the front line more of a challenge. So drones are reshaping how the war's fought. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi has been looking into them and how they can actually pose life-threatening danger at a moment's notice.
On the grounds, the conflict feels less like grand strategy and more like a slog to survive. These soldiers are tasked with defending one of the most heavily contested areas of the Donbass.
4 years in and fatigue is setting in. We are skirting around the front lines at the moment, and no longer can Ukrainian troops move in large formations. It's simply too dangerous. The threat of attack from drones is ever present.
Going forward means moving on foot, often across open ground. It's terrifying.
Quickly, there's an FPV. We're just heading to a new frontline position, and we've been warned that there is a first-person view drone, an attack drone in the sky above us. So the soldier we're with has told us to wait here and just try and take some cover.
The soldiers scan the skies and use handheld drone detectors. It's now heading over our position and hunting for a target. The radio alerts us. It's tracking back. The drone detector doesn't stop bleeping. Our movement has been spotted. We hear it before we see it.
What?
It's getting closer and closer. Another soldier joins the fight, and then relief as we see the drone fall from the sky. But we need to move quickly as more may come, or artillery could be called in on our position. A Ukrainian surveillance drone follows our progress as we get on quad bikes for the next leg of the journey to the village where the unit is stationed. Offering some protection, it is an eye in the sky. Speeding forward, smashed Ukrainian vehicles lie abandoned. A stark reminder of the danger we're heading into.
As drones have started to dominate the skies, Ukraine is now answering that threat with teams of drone hunters. And we're on our way now to meet some of them.
Inside their bunker where they live and plan their missions, they show us a drone they shot down that morning. It's cheap, mass-produced and deadly.
There
are men working with pump-action shotguns because the drones fly at their lowest altitude there. That is within the effective range for a shotgun. But here, they fly higher and faster, so the Kalashnikov is the most effective weapon.
The drones here are relentless. It's a place where they circle their prey, and men do anything to survive. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Eastern Ukraine.
Extraordinary footage there. If you scan the QR code on the screen now, you can also watch that full report from Alex Rossi and the 4 years of the Ukraine war, something we'll be covering throughout the programme.
The drone stuff in particular, though, is unbelievable. The innovation, whilst I guess you could say under the cosh from the war or forced on the war that the Ukrainians have delivered in that space, now widely kind of accepted as the best military drones in the world, and they have delivered that, behind the scenes during the course of this war. And as Sophie said, Alex's full report, well worth watching. We'll be talking to him a bit later in the programme.
We're going to be taking you to Mexico now because a pretty unbelievable situation is unfolding there. So Mexico's most wanted man, the drug lord known as El Mencho, has been killed in a military operation with the help of US intelligence.
It sparked waves of violence across Mexico, and US citizens are now being told to shelter in place until told otherwise, with major American airlines temporarily suspending flights to the country. Journalist Adam Hancock has been following the story in Mexico City and joins us now. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. So what is the latest? I guess it's late at night, very early hours where you are. Are those kind of orders still in place, and has the violence calmed down at all or even picked up overnight?
Yeah, well, we know that a lot of people are still being told to shelter in place in a number of states across Mexico this evening. We haven't had too many fresh reports of new violence taking place in the last few hours. What we have heard is that the authorities here have managed to get control of some of the blockades that were put in place across the country by members of the cartel. It's quite a common tactic from cartel members here to blockade roads to try and stop military operations and cause a little bit of chaos in the country, really. But we understand now a lot of highways have reopened. But tonight, the US embassy here, they've told US citizens to shelter in place, in particular a tourist destination called Puerto Vallarta, which is in the Jalisco state where all of this drama has taken place today. Tourists there are being told to stay in their resorts and keep a very low profile because of the violence that we've seen today in Mexico. And this was all sparked by the death of El Mencho, who was very much seen as the kingpin of drug cartels in this country. Very, very much the man at the top of the chain. He was injured in a raid by Mexico Special Forces very early on Sunday morning here, and he died from those injuries whilst being transferred here to Mexico City. But as he said, his death has sparked a wave of violence across Mexico, and there's a lot of unease here this evening.
Adam, great stuff. Thanks so much.
Now it's the BAFTAs last night, and technically, one battle after another was the big winner. They got 6 awards. They got Best Film, they got Best Director. But really the story that we're all talking about is the British rising star from Hull, who beat the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet to Best Actor, Robert Aramayo.
And there was a big win for Jessie Buckley too. She won Best Actress for her portrayal of Shakespeare's wife in Hamnet, the first Irish woman to win the award so far. And Katie Spencer has the highlights for us.
Robert Aramayo from I Swear.
This was BAFTA's big surprise. Hugging his dad, relative unknown Robert Aramayo winning over A-listers Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet for Best Actor.
I absolutely can't believe this. I can't believe that I'm looking at people like you and I'm in the same category of you. Never mind that I'm stood here.
It's called Tourette syndrome. Say things that I shouldn't. What can you do? Do you want to come in for something to eat, John?
BAFTA has formed for going its own way. It was Aramayo's performance in this film, I Swear, about Tourette's, that stopped critics in their tracks. The win, leaving the young actor stunned.
When I was in school, Ethan Hawke came in to speak to us at Juilliard, and he gave an amazing talk on longevity as an actor, about protecting your instrument and avoiding self-destructive behaviours. And it had a great impact on everyone in that room. So to be in this category with you tonight is incredible.
Watched on by the royals, the ceremony perhaps a welcome distraction for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Of course, on this side of the pond, we do things a little differently. Instead of champagne...
How do you like the idea of an Oaty hobnob flapjack?
Sounds fantastic.
From biscuits to cinematic brilliance, Jessie Buckley, the first Irish actor to win Best Actress, all for her role as a grieving mother in Hamnet.
I'd like to share this with my daughter, who's been with me since she was 6 weeks old on the road with this. It's the best role of my life, being your mom, and I promise to continue to be disobedient so that you can belong to a world in all your mad, complex wildness.
But this was also a night where the big American films rose to the top. Vampire horror Sinners taking home 3 awards, including one for its British star, Wunmi Mosaku.
I found a part of myself in Annie, a part of my hopes, my ancestral power and connection, parts of myself I thought I'd lost or tried to dim as an immigrant trying to fit in.
But it was one battle after another that was victorious. Filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson winning so many he dropped this one for writing.
Rise and shine.
Pat an eyelash.
Good morning.
There are no hands on the clock.
Why?
Because they're not needed.
Racking up 6 awards in total, One Battle is a film authority is seen as unpredictable, militarised, with the power to destabilise entire neighbourhoods.
I know what freedom is. It's no fear. So let's keep making things without fear. It's a good idea. See you at the bar.
A sentiment worth celebrating. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Wilf, you stayed up late, didn't you? Too?
Yeah, I still had a bit of jet lag from the trip, so I wasn't planning to stay up late, but I was so glad I did, because we showed a little clip of it there. But it was such a great moment when Aramayo won the Best Actor award, and actually, quite rarely, I thought all of the people he pipped were pleased for him too.
Yeah.
Like it didn't. How everyone has to practice. They're all very, very good. Yeah. I thought it was quite genuine. I thought like Leo and Timothée Chalamet, they all were sort of really pleased for him.
Yeah.
Congrats to him, congrats to Jessie Buckley and all of the other winners.
Right, let's return to our top story now, because the government is preparing to unveil the schools white paper in full this morning, and there's some really big changes to the way we're dealing with special educational needs and disabilities, £4 billion of funding, and we can find out about what it all means with our next guest.
Dame Rachel D'Souza, the Children's Commissioner, is with us. Very good morning to you. Thanks.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us. What's your kind of snapshot take on this shift, and in particular, the move of dealing with these issues in mainstream schools?
Yeah, so look, the current system is really not working. You've got really low trust, you've got parents waiting waiting years to get diagnoses, to get these EHCP plans, education, health and care plans, to get support unlocked. So it means everyone, even if they've only got moderate or mild needs, are funneled through this, getting a diagnosis, getting an EHCP. I don't think it's the best way to proceed. So I am keen to see this new change done well. I mean, when I've talked to hundreds of thousands of children and children with special educational needs, and they say to me they want to be educated in their local school with their friends, not put in taxis for 2 hours, you know, but what they say is they need to get their needs met at school. Now, if we move towards the system that's envisaged in this white paper, which is we're asking, how can we help you? You're educated in your local school, rather than what's wrong with you, we would be in a good place. And I've seen it work. I mean, I've been around the world, I've been to Canada, I've looked at different systems where it works. But the big $1 million question is, will it be funded properly? And is it going to be delivered? Is the system going to be able to be better than it is at the moment?
Because I guess this is my sort of question here, right? Because in an ideal world, educating kids together, local schools with their friends, that's the dream that everyone wants, right?
Yeah.
But if you do have kids with very complex needs, it's hard to meet them in school. And also, I guess you do have to think about the impact on the whole class, right? If you're a teacher with 30 children in the class, I saw that you got, 160 days of specialist support. You know, if you've got a really difficult situation in your class, having a speech and language therapist come in next Thursday is not going to help you, right?
Yeah, so look, first let's just break down the children in terms of what their needs are. So about 4%, 3 to 4% of children have got really deeply complex needs. I mean, last week I was in a hospice with children who could only sort of make eye movements, and they were getting social care, and they are always going to need special provision. That's a group that we actually shouldn't even, children with Downs, children with cerebral palsy, children with serious complex needs, we shouldn't even be asking, can they have a plan? It should be from birth, we're going to help you right the way through, and we'll always need special units, special provision. There, we will. But in the last few years, and this has happened right across the Western world, there's been a massive uptick in diagnosis of neurodivergent children. And there's a huge range of children there. And at the moment, the only way they get support, special extra support, is if they go for one of these education, health and care plans. And lots of parents have been saying, we want special because school doesn't meet their needs. I really think, and they tell me, if they were supported properly in school, they would want to be in their mainstream school.
On those children, on the, kids who may have ADHD, for example, on these EHCP plans, do you think the government's plans will mean the number of kids getting those plans is going to come down? Because they're obviously reviewing it. Is that, do you think, part of the aim to bring down the number, and should it be?
So I think if you look at the white paper, and we're all really looking hard at it now, I think you're going to have that small group, that 4%, with what's like an EHCP now. Now, I don't think there are going to be fewer plans, but they're going to be different plans for those children.
And is that OK, do you think?
So parents will be really frightened and worried that they won't have the same legal status, and they won't, right? But, if they're done properly and committed to, and the schools are supported to, the head teachers want to support children. I surveyed every head teacher in the country last summer. I got a 90% response rate. Their second biggest worry was children with special educational needs. They all wanted to do more, but they needed the speech and language therapists and the other people around them.
Just to be clear, do you think the government should come out and say that they guarantee that no child is going to have their support taken away?
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, I think we're talking about a massive change here. We're talking about something that's going to take years to build a system that works. So I think any child who has a plan now, and any child who's in a special school, should be given the security that they have that. That's just a basic. And as an independent children's commissioner, I'll be holding the government to account to make sure those children looked after properly.
Do you think we are getting the diagnoses right? And why has it risen so much?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Honestly, I've been to see the CMO, the Chief Medical Officer, and others, and said, what's going on? But there is now a prevalence review taking part in the Department for Health. I'm on it with 90 specialists to try to understand why there has been this massive rise since lockdown in diagnosis. Nobody will be able to give you that. There are different opinions. There will be different opinions. So we need to get the evidence base right. So that we can do the right thing by those children. But that doesn't mean we can't do the right thing now.
No.
I can tell you as a head teacher of 20 years, before I did this job, that kind, secure boundaries, the kind of good places where children can get some space to withdraw. There are lots of things we could do in mainstream. It doesn't need to be, need some big medical solution or a special school, in lots of cases.
It would be really interesting to hear the result of that review when it's done.
Yeah.
I guess maybe links to the next question. I know you've been talking to your contacts and peers in Australia.
Yeah.
What are your takes on the social media ban there?
Yes, so I'm
a month or
watching
two on.
really closely. So obviously they banned 11 social media sites and those sites are off, right? And the children are off them. But what's happened has been mass migration to other sites popping up all over the place. And I think what that social media ban in Australia, although I think it's brave and bold and I'm really sort of interested in it, has shown us is that things like gaming isn't covered. So many of our boys are spending hours and hours gaming and have got adults in, who could be anyone talking to them. And so there are lots of bits that aren't covered by that ban. So I'm really keen that in this review that's happening, I think the Westminster, the Lords has made its voice heard and said, we want to ban. Now the hard thing is, ban what? Ban how? How? And my question always is, how do we keep children safe? I also want to turn the story around a bit, which is if somewhere's not safe, they should be banned, not the children. It's actually the site that should be banned. Kids tell me they want the online world to be safe by design, but they don't want to be completely thrown off it because it's exciting and they could talk to other people and they could investigate things. So we've got a big dilemma here.
It's really interesting. And it goes back to your point as well, I think, of how in some ways it's quite useful to have Australia going there. We can kind of test out what works, what doesn't work, and then formulate policy.
I know, we just got to not rush, because we've got to...
Get it right.
We've got to let Rachel gather the actual conclusions from their position, because maybe they'll now add gaming to the ban. Or,
or make it easy to switch off chats, right? If that will make it safer.
This thing we're seeing where the bans have been put in place of just migration off them onto other things. Children, young teenagers are really smart with their tech. So I think, and do you know, when I was 16 or 15, if you banned me from something, I'd have gone and tried to do it. So I think psychologically...
I abided by the rules.
Yeah.
I was a goody-goody.
Psychologically, I think we need to think about how we're framing this, don't we?
I can't, but you're a head teacher and you're now the children's... I bet you followed the rules.
Poacher turned gamekeeper.
I love it. Amazing.
Perfect lady for the role, then.
Exactly.
Great to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Always good to have you on.
Next up, we're going to be talking about Iran and whether or not those talks between the US and Iran are working, or if there could be some dangerous next steps. We'll be right back.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back. Oman's foreign minister has confirmed another round of nuclear talks between the US and Iran will be held in Geneva this week as tensions continue to grow between the two countries. Former senior advisor from the US State Department, Nega Anga, joins us again now. Great to have you back. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
There's been a lot of assessments of the growing military presence the US has built up over weeks now. What's your assessment of how big a presence that is, and what do you conclude from it?
Well, thanks for that. I mean, the presence is quite large. There's quite a bit of hardware there. You have the airstrike carriers, you have a whole array of air assets. That's about 40 to 50% of both air and naval forces in the region. I think with President Trump's essentially playbook over the last year and a half that we've seen, he does like to show power and force when entering into negotiations. So right now we're in a wait-and-see game. Let's see what happens on Thursday. He can either go down the route of using force or using that as leverage to seek out a better negotiating deal.
Thursday being the next round of talks between the two sides.
Indeed.
With obviously the State of the Union coming on Tuesday as well. I've seen some people say that we've never seen this level of build-up compared to perhaps since 2003 before Iraq. Is that a sort of social media conclusion, or is there legitimacy behind that conclusion? Do you draw any similar conclusions from the scale of the build-up or not?
That is actually fact. It is at the levels, if not a bit more, than where we were in 2003. I think the difference with the 2003 Iraq sort of scenario, there was quite a bit of national security meetings. There was quite a bit of that sort of public dialogue, sort of conversations with Congress. What we're seeing right now with Iran has been very little conversation with Congress, very little public debate. Quite frankly, Iran wasn't even in the headlines between the 12-day war and January when the national protests started building inside the country. So I think that's where it's a bit more worrisome, is that we're not having those public debates. We don't know where the American public stands on these issues. And of course, we see the oil and market prices spark because of it.
And what's your assessment of the latest situation on the ground in Iran?
Look, I think over the weekend there was the 40-day memorial that took place, given all the deaths that occurred, the attacks, the bloody massacre that occurred by the regime against the protesters. And we had, it ignited peaceful protests at universities, at the memorial sites, and the regime essentially started arresting people, again, brutally attacking these peaceful protesters. So it does cause it ignites a little bit of that fear. It causes the international community to pay attention to what's happening. But the reality is that the IRGC and the security apparatus hasn't changed. They still are in lockstep with each other. And as soon as we start seeing fissures, I think that's when the domestic politics of Iran changes. But the security forces are still intact.
And what's your assessment of where the rest of the main players in the region's mindset is towards Iran itself? Because I think it's fair to say that one of the big shifts of the last 3 or 4 months was a kind of tacit approval, or at least dissatisfaction from many of the other major players with the Iranian regime. Does that hold, or is that softened?
Look, I think when we look at the Gulf, where they were a few years ago, a few months ago, obviously evolves. I think obviously they will be concerned about their own national security. If there are even minor skirmishes between the US and Iran militarily, it impacts them domestically, whether it's Iran launching ballistic missiles against US assets and facilities in their country, in their host country, or whether it's closing down the Strait of Hormuz and what that means in terms of their market prices, their import-export scenario. So they have to be concerned about their own safety and their citizens' safety. And so there is that bit of concern that this is not a fully baked, fleshed out plan, because if you attack, even if it's quote unquote limited, and you attack the nuclear facilities, then what's plan B? What happens when you have these skirmishes back and forth? And that's what they're worried about.
And just finally, what is your assessment of the state of Iran's nuclear program? Obviously, last summer, one of the conclusions of the military action was meant to be that it's been put back to the dark ages. Now it's the centrepiece of the negotiations. What stage are they at?
Exactly. I think that's the concern. President Trump said that the nuclear facilities were obliterated, but in fact, there are many different nuclear sites deeper into the tunnels of Fordow and whatnot. And so that is a concern that they have to go and cut that off. But then there's also the discussion of ballistic missiles and proxies that have not changed, which are a huge concern for the U.S. and the West.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Sky News has heard the government isn't ruling out a judge-led inquiry into Andrew Mountbatten's Windsor's links to the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. We can bring in our political correspondent Rob Powell to talk more about this. So, Rob, what's happening?
I think this is more a case of the government being asked what it could do and not ruling anything out, rather than it necessarily being the government sort of proactively prepping something and considering something to announce. That said, on Friday evening, they were pretty proactive in briefing journalists about taking Andrew Mountbatten Windsor out of the line of succession. That's something that would have to happen with an Act of Parliament, a bill, so there'd have to be a vote, legislation that was approved. But they're saying, look, none of this is going to happen until the police inquiry is finished. So, look, I mean, that could be years, right? I think maybe what we'll see today when MPs get back, and the reason why the government did that on Friday, is I think we'll want to see MPs bluntly maybe vent a bit about this, have an opportunity to sort of express their outrage about what has happened or potentially happened, accused of happening. And I think they will be looking for ways, mechanisms for the government to sort of get in on the act as well. I mean, I would sort of put a note of cynicism maybe in there a little bit. You know, we had MPs in the papers yesterday talking about there needing to be a higher authority to get to the bottom of what happened, you know, a committee of retired judges and MPs and peers. I sort of do wonder what use that would necessarily be practically when you already have a police inquiry that could, of course, end up with, you know, a process with a sitting judge looking at it, or AKA a trial. You know, you've already got that going forward. So I think a lot of this is sort of politicking bluntly, a lot of symbolism on this as well, around governments and MPs wanting to take the very serious issues that obviously could lie behind a lot of this very seriously as well. But, you know, it's been quite a busy recess news-wise, and you've got a busy day today with special educational needs reform, Chagos, tariffs, a new cabinet secretary. And part of me wonders whether that might be a better use of time today than maybe venting over Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. As you say as well, with the police investigation happening, it's surely that's the primary focus now. Just separately on the links, do we have an update of when the correspondence between Number 10 and then Ambassador Peter Mandelson, when that all gets released, or is that we don't have a sort of date? So I think there may well be something. I think we're possibly not today. Might be the weeks ahead. We might get something, but you know, pre-recess, people in Number 10 were very keen to point out that there is a lot of this stuff, and it needs to be gone through. Some of the sensitive stuff needs to go to the Security Committee to have a look at, to decide whether it can be redacted or not. So this is a long process, but they're keen to get something out because I think they believe that some of this stuff will back up their version of events around the appointment of Lord Mandelson and what questions were asked from Number 10. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get an initial tranche in the short term, but it may take a bit longer before we get the full whack. Rob, great stuff. Much appreciated. Obviously, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson deny any wrongdoing.
We're going to take you to the States now and a potential security breach around the home of Donald Trump because a man's been shot dead by US Secret Service agents while trying to break into President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate.
Donald Trump, of course, who survived an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania in 2024, and his wife Melania were at the White House at the time. Our correspondent Adele Robinson has more.
An armed man has been shot and killed outside Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. This is what we know. The man was trying to enter the property in Palm Beach in Florida at 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. He's been named as 21-year-old Austin Tucker Martin from Moore County in North Carolina and had been reported missing by his family. Police believe he travelled south from his home and may have picked up a shotgun on the way. The box for the gun was in his car and drove into the secure perimeter near the North Gate at Mar-a-Lago as another vehicle was leaving. 2 Secret Service agents and a Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputy saw him.
My sources say that the gate was open to allow a staff member to drive out, at which time this suspect walked in on foot carrying the gas can and shotgun, or ran in rather, at which time he was immediately recognized by a security element, and the interdiction element confronted him and neutralized the threat that he presented.
President Trump and the First Lady were not there at the time. They were at the White House in Washington, D.C. The FBI is leading the investigation and is asking those who live nearby to check their outdoor security cameras for any footage that might help. And they've also said that the FBI is dedicating all necessary resources to this investigation. The motive of the man who was shot dead trying to enter Mar-a-Lago, though, is not yet known.
Time for the sport. Very excited about this.
I don't know, did that improve your jet lag a little bit? The fact that your team Arsenal won 4-1 against Spurs,
It didn't improve my jet lag at all, but it did make me happy.
I think for a lot of people it was a huge relief. Anyway,
but more important to start.
Yeah.
Come to that.
Some really horrible, I'm going to say creeping into football, but it's always been there, racism in football, but it seems to be increasing rather than decreasing. There were 4 instances of players complaining over the weekend. Now, is it a case of maybe players in the past didn't speak up quite so freely and now everyone's just so incensed that, you know, you've got to report it. You've just got to report it. So at the weekend, there was Fofana and Hannibal, 2 players who complained that they'd been abused on social media. Yesterday, Tolu Arakadari, who's the Wolves player, he actually had a penalty saved in the match that Wolves lost to Crystal Palace. So this was his crime, having a penalty saved, my goodness. There was also Roman Mundell of Sunderland, who's a Sunderland winger. He was also abused as well. What they did was, afterwards, Arakadari and Wolves shared screenshots of the messages he got after their defeat to Palace with the social media companies. And he said, this is what he said, "It's still unbelievable to me that we're playing in a time when people have so much freedom to communicate such racism without any consequences." And then Fofana on Saturday said, "These people are never punished." It is true. But, I mean, who are these people, for a start?
And to be clear, so this is
who
all
are they?
Messages on social media.
Messages on social media, certainly for Arakadari, some of those messages were monkey emojis, but there were messages including those as well, as I understand. I haven't seen them. The reporting of says that's what it is.
And also the thing about social media is people are hiding behind the anonymity, right? Because at football, and obviously there is racist abuse at football, but there's an opportunity to be condemned by fellow fans, and that's something that I've definitely witnessed at football as well, like self-policing, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But on social media, there's no consequences.
No, there's no consequences. I think that's what's really frustrating for the players. But what it is, I mean, one of the complaints is social media don't do enough to take it down. There must be a mechanism of stopping that stuff from being even posted in the first place. Because once it's in your mind and you've seen it, you've seen it. You can't, like, unsee it, can you? Let's move on to Arsenal Spurs, because it was a really good news story for Arsenal. Not such a good news story for Spurs and Igor Tudor in his first match in charge. He was probably thinking, oh, bigger job than I thought, this one. Anyway, 2 goals for Eberechi Eze, who got a hat-trick in the last fixture as well. He loves scoring against Spurs, clearly. He set them on their way with their first one. Then there was a mistake by Declan Rice, and he kind of held his hands up, and that allowed Spurs back in. But then there was another goal, so that was OK. Victor Gyökeres had a really good match last night as well, getting 2 goals for himself as well.
It's obviously a great result, 4-1 away at Spurs.
Yeah, because
the only caveat I'm going to say is, as you said, we immediately conceded after the first goal. We immediately conceded after the second goal, but it was rather generously disallowed. So the 4-1, I kind of think, makes it sound like all our struggles are gone.
All right, let's look at this then. David Raya, sandwiched in between, well, it's 3-1, so sandwiched in between two of the Opera's goals. Look at that save.
Yeah.
I mean, how good is that? So it could have been 3-2 at that point, maybe a different story.
So that's my caveat point. My rather bullish point is, you know, we're on for the quintuple now, which is the quad plus Spurs getting relegated.
Can I just say, I was really looking forward to coming back from holiday after, the Wolves result.
After we choked last week.
After the Wolves result, thinking, maybe we're going to have a resurgence at Tottenham. Maybe there's going to be a chance for some kind of.
I know. Do you know what? There was
I think they were thinking that
and it hasn't happened.
Right,
sadly.
Well, hold on quickly. There were a lot of reasons why I wanted us to win yesterday. I think top of the list was not facing the choke accusations from you today.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for getting us through it,
4-1, I can't do anything now.
But they're back on track is the point, from Arsenal fans. And for those who said, Wolves, what was that? Suddenly it's like, OK, we've stood up, we're fine. All is normal. We want to have a look at the Olympics as well, but I think we're out of time.
I know,
we're out of time for the Olympics.
I took too much time there.
Yeah.
But we've got a couple more hours and we can talk more about Arsenal.
Let's ban Arsenal chats going forward so we can talk about the Olympics instead.
Jackie, great stuff. Thank you. We have to have a look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
It'll be mild this week, but expect further rain and strong winds at times, with the heaviest rain in the northwest. Central and northern parts will see widespread blustery and locally heavy showers this morning, concentrated in the northwest, while southern Britain will be mainly dry. Northern and central Britain will have showers into the afternoon, while the southwest will see cloud and more general, mainly light rain and drizzle taking over East Anglia, and the southeast look mainly dry and sunny. It'll be very mild again and fairly windy.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up 4 years on from the beginning of the Ukraine war, we're going to be talking to the military analyst Sean Bell about the latest on the front line.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
These are crazy. It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat.
It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin.
Jerry, any comment on the judge's decision? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Thank you for watching The Wrap every night of the week. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
Just cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree.
And laughs along the way.
Ooh, cheap.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. Tomorrow marks 4 years since Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, and over that time, a small menacing weapon has made daily life on the front line a slog to survive. Drones are reshaping how the war is fought, and they can pose life-threatening danger at a moment's notice. We played Alex Rossi's excellent report on that earlier in the programme. You can find the full report online. Let's discuss it and the 4-year anniversary with Sean Bell. Sean, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Wilf. Good morning, Sophie.
My first question just is on the drone technology that Ukraine has developed over the last 4 years. Are they now the world leaders?
Well, yes, I suppose they are in the utility, but there's a lot of other countries around the world that are actually feeding stuff and using Ukraine as a test case. For the viewers, you know, the original drones, many people, I bought myself one of these little lightweight drones. You can buzz around, they're GPS guided, very accurate, got a good range and whatever. But of course, they're relatively easy to jam. And so the Russians started jamming them. And the youngsters on the front line, and I've actually been to visit some of the guys who operate these overnight. They're sort of thinking of different ways of upgrading. So they had terrain mapping. Therefore, you didn't require the use of the satellite. It would recognize the terrain. But again, they got jammed. Then they moved to fiber optic drones, which now left 15 kilometers. This little tiny wispy cable littered around the battlefield. And that looks like gossamer. It looks like a spider's web in the first bits of the morning. And that makes they're unable to be jammed then. But of course, now they're developing anti-drone drones, so little drones that go out and take out the bigger drones. It is a very, very rapid, high-tech world where it's not just Ukraine, it's actually a lot of the world are using that to test new capabilities. And of course, when the war is over, that has profound implications for what we do in the West.
You see, this is it, isn't it? If you look through history as well, it's kind of fascinating and slightly terrifying how these huge leaps in technology so often happen on the battlefield at moments of war and conflict. Where are we up to, 4 years on, Sean? What's your kind of assessment of the stage we're at in the war?
Yeah, it's with a somewhat heavy heart, really, because, I remember vividly the day, that 40-mile convoy, all of this, is Russia going to invade or not? And of course, we genuinely, as military guys, thought that with the might of Russia, we are talking about a David and Goliath battle here. The Russian economy is 10 times the size of Ukraine, that we thought it would be over pretty quickly. But amazingly, 4 years on, Ukraine's tenacity, courage, and ultimately their sacrifice means that Russia holds about 20% of the territory. I think the big issue here is that soldiers win battles, but it's nations that win wars. And what I mean by that is that you need your defence industrial base spun up to generate the huge amounts of bullets, rockets, missiles, artillery. Russia has done that very successfully. It has oil and gas, huge natural resources, and despite all the sanctions, it's still generating a lot of money and able to pull in Iranian and North Korean weapons, whereas in the West, Ukraine has been sort of pummeled. It's very difficult for it to keep its energy infrastructure going and therefore its defence industry. And since the start of the war, when President Bush was very supportive, the biggest economy in the world, the most powerful nation in the world, all of a sudden in the last year, President Trump has turned that tap off. And I think in big handfuls, that's made life incredibly difficult for Ukraine. The West has tried to step up, but bluntly on the front line at the moment, Ukraine is gently losing. Russia is advancing slowly. It's paying an awful price, but as we stand, it's a very difficult time on the battlefields for Ukraine.
Sean, just a quick question on Iran, if I may, and your assessment of the scale of military build-up there from the US perspective.
Yeah, I mean, they call me a cynic, but I mean, obviously you've got the two carrier groups, Abraham Lincoln and now the Gerald Ford. There's a very overt presence, but the harsh reality is that the US could do most of the military action from continental US. You know, the B-2 bomber can do a sort of nearly 40-hour round-trip mission. So some of this is posturing, some of this is to try to intimidate Iran. And the harsh reality is that if America was to take military action, and I've no doubt that President Trump has got that in his portfolio of action, Iran could also fight back as well. It wouldn't be able to damage America, but the Straits of Hormuz, it could shut down. There's lots of ways that it... And just remember, there was lots of note in the news about our reluctance to let America use Diego Garcia or Fairford. Well, the reality is that the ballistic missile program of Iran does reach the UK, doesn't reach America. We want to be very careful before we get involved in a war where we suddenly become a target.
Sean, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's quite depressing to hear there, the kind of like Ukraine slowly losing despite the bravery, despite everything that they've poured into the battle over these 4 years. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about it later with Alex Rossi. You've done that great report that we played earlier. He'll be joining us a bit later in the programme. Also to come up, we'll lead off, of course, again with the latest government announcements on the SEND reports and the change of policy there. Yeah, something that's going to impact an awful lot of families, an awful lot of children. We'll be discussing what it all means coming up in just a few moments' time.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, it is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Richard Frost.
With Sophy and Wilfred, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
A £4 billion package to make mainstream schools more inclusive for special educational needs pupils. We'll find out if it's going to work.
Tourists are left stranded in Mexico by a wave of cartel violence sparked by the killing of its most wanted drug boss.
A British rising star from Hull beats the biggest names in Hollywood to the Best Actor prize at the BAFTAs. A great night for Robert Aramayo.
And we're outside Royal Lodge with the officers investigating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, expected to continue their search of the former prince's home.
4 years of war in Ukraine and the fight has become attritional. We'll be joined by our international correspondent Alex Rossi, who's visited the unit using drones to defend their homeland.
A very good morning to you. A generational overhaul of special educational needs is being unveiled today. At the heart of it is a change in philosophy that children with additional needs should, where possible, be taught in mainstream rather than specialist schools.
So to do that, the government is announcing £4 billion of funding to help schools adapt and become more inclusive for children who need extra support. But look, this is a complex issue. The number of children who receive SEND support is rising, and with that, so is the bill. Sky's Anjum Pirbakes has been speaking to parents about the changes.
For many parents, the special educational needs system is already a battle. And getting an educational healthcare plan, which is a legally binding package outlining the requirements for the child, is even more challenging. One mother whose child has an EHCP says the right to challenge decisions made by the local authority is essential.
So for us as a family, we have an EHCP. We're currently in the process of appealing 3 sections of the EHCP. If we didn't have that right, then our son would obviously be essentially forced to attend mainstream school, which is unsuitable.
She says when her son was placed in a mainstream school, the impact on the entire family was immediate and severe.
It was horrible. It was the worst time of our life as a family. You know, it nearly broke us. Grayson went from being a really happy child to screaming and refusing to leave the house.
The government wants to change the SEND system to help ease the processes. They say the reforms will transform support for children across England, with £4 billion over 3 years to make mainstream schools more inclusive with targeted early interventions, of which £1.6 billion will focus solely on SEND.
And what I'm determined to make happen is that children get support earlier, they get it when they need it, and that we don't wait until things have reached crisis point.
Critics argue that although this is a step in the right direction, they say it's not enough.
And while £1.6 billion for frontline services is a substantial investment, we have to remember that this is stretched across tens of thousands of schools, colleges and early years providers, and it is over 3 years. So it will not be enough to fund increased staffing in each setting. We need to understand the plan for how this funding will change SEND support for the better.
The government say the reforms will create a more inclusive system where support is available in every school and community. But for families already navigating SEND provision, the white paper represents a pivotal moment, one that could reshape how children access education, support and specialist services for generations to come. Anjum Pirbakes, Sky News.
Well, this is a really complex policy area, so let's try and find out what's going on. We've got the Minister for School Standards here, Georgia Gould. Thanks for being on the programme.
Pleasure.
So first, can you just explain, what is the thinking behind this? What is the philosophy?
Yeah, so we have a
a system that is really failing children with special educational needs and disabilities. Too many children around the country are out of education, not getting the support they need within mainstream schools. We've seen, outcomes worsen, 3 times more likely to be suspended, and we've seen a doubling of a number of children going into special schools. And we really think that more children can be educated in their local community if our mainstream schools were set up to support them. And, the benefits for children of being educated amongst their friends are huge for their life chances. And so we recognise that can't happen without investment and support, and that's what we're setting out today.
I guess everyone would agree that, the ideal is for all children to be, at the local school with their mates in a school that can provide for them. But £4 billion of funding might seem like a lot. But if you are in, I don't know, a classroom with some children with really serious needs, who need a lot of additional support, you've got 30 kids in there, so you're trying to do the right thing for all the kids, not just those with additional needs. You've got, 160 days of specialist input each year. But if you're the teacher in that class, it's not going to help if, next Thursday you've got a speech and language therapist coming in. I mean, I guess the concern that some people will have is mainstream schools might not be appropriate for all these kids.
So it's really important to say that special schools will remain a really big part of our system. We're investing in new special schools and...
Are you going to be closing down some special schools as well?
We're not closing down any schools. What we are saying is that we will have a price cap, so the private equity-backed independent schools that are kind of making excessive profits will have a kind of fair pricing for all schools. But no, the special schools will remain in the system. But many children are able to thrive in mainstream schools, and I have visited mainstream schools where they have the right training, the right pastoral support, the right inclusion spaces, individual plans. Children are really succeeding, and too often I speak to parents who are talking about what a battle it is. But in some of these schools, parents will say to me, look, I can just breathe, my child is being supported. And that is happening. It's not something that, that we need to imagine. It's something that we can see, but we need to support it to happen everywhere.
Some parents are going to be worried about this, but at the minute they have a EHCP, which, is the kind of legal right for certain support in schools. Are you tightening up the criteria on that? Can you just explain how this is going to work? So kids with less needs, you're not going to have a legal right? What's going on?
So EHCPs will remain an important part of the system. We are setting out the full plans later, and we want to do that in one place so people can read them. But there are a large number of children, 1.2 million children, who are on SEND support, who are below EHCPs. And at the moment, they're the ones who are really not getting the support they need. And often families say to me, we didn't actually want to have to apply for an EHCP, but there was nothing else. So we had to battle to get an EHCP. So we're putting in new legally backed support at the mainstream level. And that's what that $4 billion we talked about today really delivers.
The reason I'm asking this is because I think a lot of people will be worrying that the support they currently get is going to be taken away. I just want to play you Rachel D'Souza. So this is the Children's Commissioner. We had her on earlier. This is what she had to say. Do you think the government should come out and say that they guarantee that no child is going to have their support taken away?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think we're talking about a massive change here. We're talking about something that's going to take years to build a system that works. So I think any child who has a plan now and any child who's in a special school should be given the security that they have that. That's just a basic. And as an independent Children's Commissioner, I'll be holding the government to account to make sure those children are looked after properly.
Can you give that guarantee that she's asking for?
So we want children to keep the support they have, and we've actually asked the Children's Commissioner.
Because that's a slightly different answer. Can you guarantee that no child's going to lose the support they currently have?
So where there's support in place for children, they won't lose support. We're going to be putting more support in place. But I think it's really important for people to know that the Children's Commissioner said she's going to be holding us to account. We have asked her to independently judge us on reform. So every year until 2030, she will be kind of setting out her independent view of system readiness, because things should look really different. All teachers should be trained to support children with special educational needs and disability. There should be an inclusion base in every secondary school. You talked about speech and language therapists and educational psychologists coming in. They should be doing audits of schools' practice and really supporting them to put the things in place that help children. And, we need to really invest in that system, but we also need accountability, and parents want that. And so the Children's Commissioner, as she said, will be holding us to account very strongly as we build that new system. And we are investing first. We're not changing anything till 2030.
Can I ask you about student loans?
Of course.
A bit of a different part of someone's educational journey, if you like, because it's something that we've been covering quite a lot in this programme. And honestly, I've been quite shocked by the level of interest that people are paying on their loans. People saying that they've been in work and their student loan is now bigger than when they started work, despite the payments they've been making. And there have been calls to, scrap the extra interest on student loans. At the minute, these Plan 2 loans, you get interest up to 3%, as well as inflation, which is currently 3.2%. Do you think that's something that needs to change?
Look, this is a system that we did not build. It was built by the Conservative government. We're clear it is a system that has difficulties that we're continuing to look at. We have raised the threshold this year, which means if you're on an income of 30,000, you'll pay about £4 a month. So that will help people. But, we recognise that it's difficult, and that's why we're putting wider support in to support young people with the cost of living crisis.
But do you think it's right? Would you support the idea that the extra interest on top of inflation shouldn't be charged on a student loan? Or is that not realistic?
It's the system we have at the moment. It is different from another kind of loan. If you lose your job, you wouldn't have to pay it. It's the system that we have. It's something that we'll continue to look at. But
what's your sense on it, though? Because we know it's a system that you got. You made the point that you inherited it from the Conservatives. But I guess for most students, they want to know, are you going to do anything about it?
As I say, it's an area that we will continue to look at. We've got huge pressures, and I've talked today about some of the new investments we're putting in, and supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities. It's a crucial part of what we're setting out. So we'll continue to invest in those areas, but we'll look at the student loans, But more broadly, young people, they're a group that have not been supported well enough by the Conservative government. So things like house building, things like investment in childcare, they will make a big difference to that generation.
The Conservatives are calling for the interest to be scrapped, it should be said, though. So.
Yeah, the system that they built, and
you made the point, but
they're also talking about removing courses from students. So we're here today talking about the investment we're making into the opportunities of millions of young people.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Good to have you on the programme. George Gould speaking to us there.
Now, tomorrow, the full-scale war in Ukraine will enter its 5th year. It's become a grinding test of attrition for both sides, where movement on the map is measured in metres, not miles.
And something that's made a huge difference, actually, is drones. A small but quite menacing weapon. It's made daily life on the front line a real challenge as well, and are actually reshaping how the war is fought. Here's our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, who has been reporting on the life-threatening danger that they can cause at a moment's notice.
We hear it before we see it. What? It's getting closer and closer. Another soldier joins the fight, and then relief as we see the drone fall from the sky. But we need to move quickly as more may come, or artillery could be called in on our position. A Ukrainian surveillance drone follows our progress as we get on quad bikes for the next leg of the journey to the village where the unit is stationed. Offering some protection, it is an eye in the sky. Speeding forward, smashed Ukrainian vehicles lie abandoned. A stark reminder of the danger we're heading into.
As drones have started to dominate the skies, Ukraine is now answering that threat with teams of drone hunters. And we're on our way now to meet some of them.
Well, did I say that Alex joins us now, and you can watch Alex's full report, which is really well worth watching on the Sky News website. But Alex, I mean, we've all been talking about drones dominating warfare on the front lines these days. One could lazily assume that means that the humans are a long way away and that the drones might potentially reduce the risks to people on the front line. I mean, your report on this shows that's really not the case, and your access extraordinary, but the bravery as well on show from everyone involved is really compelling.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about drones in Ukraine, I suppose we have to make the point that there are lots of different types of drones. So here where I am in the capital of Kiev, long-range drones frequently target the city, as they did last night. Now, when we're talking about the front lines in southern Ukraine and eastern Ukraine, again, you're talking about different types of drones. The drone that was circling over us and looking for a target was what's known as an FPV drone, a first-person view drone. It's operated by somebody just behind the front lines from the Russian positions. They can see us, and it will have an explosive charge on it as well, which will then be detonated when it finds its target. So, you know, on the front lines, that's a very immediate threat to the soldiers there. But of course, we should also mention that artillery is pretty constant as well. So another enormous threat. But the big problem that they are having down in eastern Ukraine for the Ukrainians is keeping the supply roads open. That's what the team of drone hunters we were with, that was their mission. They go around trying to shoot these drones down as they pass over them to try and hit the main supply roads around what's known as the Fortress Belt. We were near Sloviansk, which is one of the main logistical hubs. So that is their mission. And you're now at a stage in the war where just moving around brings enormous jeopardy. Soldiers can't move around in large formations. You can't send supplies forward in large quantities very easily as well, because they just get hit by these drones. So it has completely changed the nature of warfare. And I think we're only at the beginning of that too. I think there are going to be enormous changes still the longer this war goes on.
I mean, Alex, the technological change that we've witnessed has been extraordinary. But I guess just looking at the images that you've filmed, it just brings to light that this is a nation. These are men, women on the front line, 4 years on. You know, what state is the war in at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, on the front lines, it is absolutely terrifying, but I was only there for 1 day. I go home. The men who are stationed down there, they are doing that every day, coming out of bunkers, shooting down drones, facing artillery. And of course, for the rest of the country, they're not immune from the war either. The war has come to every part of Ukraine. So where I am now in Kiev, in the capital, there are rolling power cuts. People are living in their apartments. It's a little bit warmer today, but it's still well below zero. But temperatures have been dropping to minus 20. So you can see just how difficult it is. People are in their apartments. They've got no warmth at all. And throughout the day, and it's not just in Kiev, it's in every main city and town across the country, you hear throughout the day the air raid sirens. That's another trip down to either a bunker, or here lots of people head down to the subway. So it is, you know, it's enormously difficult. I would say the mood here is one of fatigue, but people are resilient and they are also defiant. Remember, this was a 10-day special military operation launched by Moscow. They thought they'd seize the whole country. They thought it was all wrapped up. But here we are. Tomorrow is the 4th year anniversary, and the Ukrainians are still fighting against, a much bigger enemy.
Thank you so much, Alex. Extraordinary reporting there. And if you do scan the QR code on the screen now, you can watch that full report from Alex Rossi. Definitely worth doing.
Now, the mother of Barnaby Webber, who was killed in the 2023 Nottingham attack, is fighting for answers as she prepares for a public inquiry that gets underway today. Valdo Callicane fatally stabbed 19-year-old Barnaby and 2 other people before driving a van into pedestrians. Emma Webber, Barnaby's mother, joins us now. Emma, thank you so much for joining us. This is no doubt an incredibly tough day for you and tough days ahead. But are you, on some level, ready for this process to begin?
Yeah, on some level, yeah. Hi, thanks for taking time to speak to us. Yeah, we're ready. It's been a long time coming, but now that it's here, I think all of the families are overwhelmed, apprehensive and anxious, but we're ready to get on with it. The enormity of it all, I think, has hit home over the past few weeks and months as we've seen all of the information and the documents and like today behind me at Mary Ward House, just the sheer scale of how many people are going to be here. But you know what, we need to get day one done, and I think we're trying to just almost see it as week by week, because it's going to be bumpy, but we're going to see it through to the bitter end.
Just to say, we're so sorry about what happened to your son. He was 19 years old, student, Barnaby, and I remember so clearly the tragedy of that day. I can't really imagine what you've gone through since. And you were talking there about the documents that have come out. What have you been, I guess, most shocked by in what you found and discovered since that day?
I've got to be careful what I say, because at the moment, obviously, we've had access to a lot of, well, there's hundreds of thousands of documents. So we've had access to stuff that we're not allowed to talk about until it is in the public domain. And thank God, this is a statutory public inquiry. So the truth will come out, and our legal team will get a chance to ask those really important questions. But I couldn't say there's one single point of failure, because there's failure absolutely everywhere through, like incompetent management and treatment of him from 2020 onwards, countless opportunities where his violence was escalating and getting more and more grievous by each one. Once he carried out his heinous attacks, the police investigation was not far off utterly incompetent. And I think the things that have shocked us the most is what we weren't told at all the ways through. This is an individual that should not have been out in society, not just that year, that month. He should have been dealt with and managed for years and years beforehand. And the repeated failures and inability to do that are shocking, but they are heartbreaking and tragic, because Barney should be here. Barney would be 22 years old. He would have graduated from university. He's missed so much. We've missed so much. His brother misses him so much. And his brother Charlie is now 18 and is going to be 19 this year, which is the age that Barney was when he was taken from us. So I hope that from this inquiry, the human side of the toll that this has taken on all of the families will also become apparent, because it's not just legislative and it's not just procedural.
It certainly isn't, and you're so brave and impressive to be talking about it so in such a forward-looking way as you are. What else do you hope comes out of this, apart from changes so that the same thing doesn't happen again? Is there a wish for accountability for those that could have done more?
Yeah. I think I say this all the time, I'm so sick of hearing the copy and paste versions of lessons will be learned and our unreserved apologies. That's an absolute rot, because they haven't been for decades, have they? What will come out of this is the truth, which brings accountability, but accountability to individuals that failed, that didn't do their jobs properly, that lied and covered up. And accountability to the organisations and institutions that employed them and have closed ranks and failed to give the answers they need to. So I think with accountability, that will force change to happen, and that will force improvements in practices and in laws and legislation moving forward, so that will ultimately make a seismic change. But each of those organisations and institutions, with relatively small improvements, really could make a massive change to public safety. And had they done the jobs properly, Barney, Grace and Ian would definitely still be here. But it's also the countless people before and after them that have continued to lose their lives due to our inept systems. And yeah, we want, most importantly for me, this miscarriage of justice to be addressed. Callaghan is not where he should be. As will become apparent, there was an awful lot more to that individual, to his background, to his planning, and to what people knew about him. He was mentally very, very unwell. Who wouldn't be to do something like that? But he knew what he was doing. And he's in hospital receiving his benefits at the moment, trying to get out within a few years. And we have to make sure that gets addressed and stopped.
I know you've got to go, but I just wondered if you wanted to leave us with, you know, a memory or a thought about your son, about Barnaby.
I mean, he was. Do you know what I want to say about Barney is real? He wasn't perfect. He wasn't, you know, this A student, this top sports star. He was brilliant at sport. He obviously did really well to get into Nottingham University. But he was a really real person. He was really genuine. And I think that my son was the most authentic person I have ever met. And I'm so proud when I look at his brother, Charlie, and I look at him strangely sometimes. He says, Mum, what are you staring at? And I just say, because you start to look like your brother now that you're getting older. And yesterday, I went to see a dear friend who baked us some cakes to bring up to London. Thank you, Nancy. And I saw for the first time this year a Red Admiral butterfly. And I had tattoos of Grace and Barney, because those are small signs, I think, that they're with us and that they know what we're doing for them. And yeah, Barney, this is for you. And I will get this done, son, I promise you.
You certainly will. You're amazing, and you know you're doing your son proud. So thank you so much for talking, and thank you, and good luck for later as well.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for covering us. Thank you.
Amazing.
That's just so moving, isn't it? It really is.
To the BAFTAs next, and last night Prince William said when asked about whether he'd watched Hamnet or not that he wasn't in a calm state, and therefore hadn't watched the film yet. It's, of course, one of the films that was nominated for Best Picture. He said he needed to be in a calm mood to watch it. His wife, the Princess of Wales, said she had watched it, but it had brought her to floods of tears. And she said she knew it was a bad idea, actually, to watch it. She ended up with very puffy eyes, but it was very beautifully shot, the music as well, the score, fantastic. But William saying he wasn't in a calm state at the moment in order to watch it.
Yeah, so lots of speculation that this is a comment directed at Andrew at Mountbatten Windsor, of course. But also, I guess it could also be, you know, Hamlet is a deeply upsetting film as well, right? It's about the death of a child.
Yeah.
That's why me and you haven't brought ourselves to watch it.
My wife and I booked to watch it, and then I hadn't actually, this was a month or two ago, researched what it was about, and I cancelled. So I think it could be a number of reasons why he didn't watch it.
Yeah, I think this is exactly. I've read the book, and I'll be honest, I found the book really hard going, because it's just so emotional. It really is, and I've rewarded the film as a result as well.
But kudos to Jessie Buckley.
Oh, yeah.
Who got Best Actress last night for it. So it's clearly a fantastic movie. We're gonna have more of a report on the BAFTAs later on in the programme. We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll be talking about the latest situation in the US. Lots of political developments there, as ever, and we'll be talking to Michael Yaki, former advisor to Nancy Pelosi.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the US now. As usual, all eyes on President Trump. He's doubled down on his global tariffs, despite the US Supreme Court ruling a large part of his tariff use unlawful, and also focus on the international stage. His team, of course, engaging in further talks with Iran later this week in Geneva. And, of course, it's the State of the Union tomorrow night as well. Let's talk about it all with the former senior advisor to Nancy Pelosi, Michael Yaki. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Will.
Great to see you. So before we get into the intricacies of the tariffs, how striking was it to you that the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 against a very important policy for President Trump, when many people assumed the balance was 6-3 the other way?
Right. Well, I think that the most surprising thing were his two most recent appointees, Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, voting with John Roberts to basically strike down the tariffs. And you saw him, basically go on a diatribe against them. He made a joke about he wasn't sure if they should show up for his State of the Union. But I think it's a little bit of here the rule of law should exist in the United States, but they've given him a lot of passes on a lot of other things so far. I think in this case, the fact that Roberts especially has been very keen on the word taxes and whether taxes appears or not. That's what he used to sustain Obamacare. Not being in the IEPPA enabled him to say, there is no authority, you can't do it, no one's ever used it, sorry.
Focus on the tariffs a second. Is there an element of particularly those two, Justice Gorsuch and Barrett, reading the room of public opinion? Or is that too sort of sceptical of their motives being based purely on the law?
I think it's a little bit too skeptical. I think that it's more a point of if you actually read the law, from the very beginning, all legal scholars on left and right pretty much said, we don't think he has the authority to do that. And that was a through line all the way up to and including the Supreme Court arguments and to the decision that came down. It was really only sort of the hard right believers who believe that the president has unilateral authority to do anything that he or she wants to do that were saying, that of course he can do that. But then again, he's now said, well, I'm going to try all these other tariffs. I'm going to get it to where I need to because he needs that money to close about a $1.5 trillion hole in his big, beautiful budget bill.
Obviously, they didn't overturn all of his tariffs, as you're alluding to, and he's using other legal cover to reimpose and escalate other types of tariffs. Where do you think that takes us in the next couple of months? Why don't we use the UK as an example?
Sure.
Obviously, there's a sort of semi-deal on the table. Do you think those deals go ahead, whether it's with the UK or other countries?
Well, I think that certainly the Prime Minister wants this deal to go through. You're at 10%. You're 5% below the rest of Europe and a lot of the rest of the world. It's good because, it's a $70 billion market for British goods, and be able to have that sort of 5 pence advantage is a good thing. The question is whether or not, now that agreement didn't rely on that particular law, but the other laws that he's looking at have a sort of a non-discrimination clause in it, and whether or not that means that if he says 15%, the 10% goes away is one of those things that you just don't know. And I think Starmer, for the exporters, for his relationship with Trump, has to decide honey or stick, right? And I think part of that bleeds over into the whole discussion of the use of Chagos and the lease and American bombers, Diego Garcia.
Do you think that has been strategically used by Starmer in the last couple of days, or is it coincidental?
I don't think that the issue of the tariffs was really foremost in his mind. I think that really he was thinking, I don't want to be involved in any bombing of Iran. I don't think there's any legal precedent for it. I don't want. This is not something that I believe in. But now he actually has a little bit of a lever against Trump to say, or a little honey, depending on how you want to look at it, to say, well, if you really want to use Diego Garcia, which is part of the Chagos, as a staging for your bombers, let's take a look at this 10% agreement and let's agree that stays in place no matter what you do.
I guess it depends who has the cards ultimately as to how that might go. What about Iran? Do you think action is likely there?
I don't. I mean, I think that he's saying it a lot. He wants to scare them at the table. The question is, what else is there to bomb? Because right now, the only thing that really, if you believe all the reports before, most of their nuclear capability and the enrichment facilities were badly damaged. The question is the next move decapitation? And I mean by that, the leadership of Iran. And that's what he's hinting at. Whether he would actually do it, because that's a real big step forward in international, you-know-what. We'll see.
Nearly out of time. I was going to ask the midterms, but I'm going to skip that and go to 2028. You're so plugged into the Democratic Party. Is Newsom comfortably the front-runner to be the nominee, or just slightly ahead?
I think the media sees Newsom and everything he's doing in terms of being sort of the leading troller of Trump. But there's Josh Shapiro, there's Mark Kelly, there's Andy Bashir. There's a lot of books are coming out.
Yeah.
And all the books are to signify...
They're all coming over here to sort of Munich and other conferences.
Exactly. So I think if there's any conventional wisdom is that no one who's ever the front runner is really the front runner until the very end.
Michael, always great to catch up. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Michael Yaki, former senior advisor to Nancy Pelosi.
It's true, isn't it? It's always a twist. It's always a twist.
I know.
Always.
Also, by the way, I feel bad asking it because we always say, oh, these election cycles are too long. I'm making it long there by making it one of my chief talking points, but it is interesting.
Oh, yeah. That's what we all
and by the way, they all have been coming over here whenever they can, whether it's Davos or I was about to say the BAFTAs. That's our next story. Or Munich Security Conference. It would have been interesting to see them at
a little
the
bit different, BAFTAs, Munich
Why
Security
not?
Conference, but hey.
Plug the two together.
True.
Actually, Munich was about 10 days ago now. I'm getting confused as to dates and events. Anyway, we're going to move on to the BAFTAs because even if senior US politicians weren't there, pretty much everyone else was.
Yeah, they were.
And last night, one battle after another was the sort of biggest winner. It got 6 awards, including Best Film and Best Director. But one story stood out.
Yeah, I think so. The story we're all talking about in studio today is the British rising star from Hull, who beat the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio, Timothée Chalamet to Best Actor, and that was Robert Aramayo.
There was also a big win for Jessie Buckley. She won Best Actress for her portrayal of Shakespeare's wife in Hamnet, and is the first Irish woman to win that award. Katie Spencer has all the highlights for us.
Robert Aramayo from I Swear.
This was BAFTA's big surprise. Hugging his dad, relative unknown Robert Aramayo winning over A-listers Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet for Best Actor.
I absolutely can't believe this. I can't believe that I'm looking at people like you and I'm in the same category of you. Never mind that I'm stood here.
It's called Tourette syndrome. I see things that I shouldn't. What can you do? Do you want to come in for something to eat, John?
BAFTA has form for going its own way. It was Aramayo's performance in this film, I Swear, about Tourette's, that stopped critics in their tracks. The win, leaving the young actor stunned.
When I was in school, Ethan Hawke came in to speak to us at Juilliard, and he gave an amazing talk on longevity as an actor, about protecting your instrument and avoiding self-destructive behaviours. And it had a great impact on everyone in that room. So to be in this category with you tonight is incredible.
Watched on by the royals, the ceremony perhaps a welcome distraction for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Of course, on this side of the pond, we do things a little differently. Instead of champagne...
How do you like the idea of an Oaty Hobnob flapjack?
Sounds fantastic.
From biscuits to cinematic brilliance, Jessie Buckley, the first Irish actor to win Best Actress, all for her role as a grieving mother in Hamnet.
I'd like to share this with my daughter, who's been with me since she was 6 weeks old on the road with this. It's the best role of my life, being your mom, and I promise to continue to be disobedient so that you can belong to a world in all your mad, complex wildness.
But this was also a night where the big American films rose to the top. Vampire horror Sinners taking home 3 awards, including one for its British star, Wunmi Mosaku.
I found a part of myself in Annie, a part of my hopes, my ancestral power and connection, parts of myself I thought I'd lost or tried to dim as an immigrant trying to fit in.
But it was one battle after another that was victorious. Filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson winning so many he dropped this one for writing.
Rise and shine.
Bat an eyelash.
Good morning.
There are no hands on the clock.
Why?
Because they're not needed.
Racking up 6 awards in total, One Battle is a film authority is seen as unpredictable, militarised, with the power to destabilise entire neighbourhoods.
I know what freedom is. It's no fear. So let's keep making things without fear. It's a good idea. See you at the bar.
A sentiment worth celebrating. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
So we've been talking this morning about the really quite significant changes to the way that we deal with kids with special educational needs and disabilities in this country. The government planning to release the school's white paper in full this morning, and we're going to get big reforms with these children as well, along, of course, with incentives for new head teachers in areas where it's hard to find staff. But in particular, of course, it's the changes to special educational needs that people are focusing on. And we can talk now to the Liberal Democrat education spokesperson, Munira Wilson, who's with us now. Thanks for being with us.
Morning.
So let's kind of boil it down. What's your takeaway on these reforms? Good idea, bad idea? What's your view?
Well, look, my party's been calling for years for overhaul of the special educational needs system. The previous Conservative Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, said it was lose, lose, lose for families, and MPs across the country are hearing from families who are battling the system. So it's right that there is reform. It's unfortunate it's been delayed for so long since the government came to power in July 2024. So we will be looking in detail. I think the direction of travel overall is positive around focusing on mainstream, but we need to see adequate investment, first of all, in early intervention and screening, so we're picking up children early, but also in state-run specialist provisions so that we can get private equity, who are frankly using a lot of our children, and local authorities as cash cows, out of SEND.
So, in other words, you're saying that you agree that more kids should be in mainstream school rather than specialist schools, and those specialist schools run by the state, not by private providers. Is that what you're saying?
Well, where it's appropriate, children should be supported properly in mainstream school, but it is true that we absolutely need more specialist provision. I have seen, Sophie, with my own eyes, the impact in a classroom of a child with complex needs who isn't being supported appropriately, who needs to be in a specialist provision. But most of our state-run special schools are at or over capacity, and that's because historically over the last decade or so the government has not opened and funded enough state special schools, which has allowed these private equity run special schools and other private providers to come in and really cream the system and bleed our councils dry, taking money away from vulnerable children. So we want to get them out.
So you want to see SEND provision designated as an essential national infrastructure. So that's currently reserved for things like energy, transport, water. So would this basically mean you can just block private companies from entering the market?
Well, look, as a Liberal, I think we should have private and voluntary sector and state provision for services, and there will be some very complex needs which can't necessarily be met by the state. What a critical national infrastructure designation would do would allow the Secretaries of State to step in where a merger or an acquisition is not in the best interest, to make sure there's transparency around funding. At the moment, some of these companies...
Sorry. The question is,
yes,
would this allow the government to stop private companies from entering the market?
if it's not in the best interests of children in that particular area, then it could do, potentially. At the moment, we've got some companies that are funneling off in excess of 20% profit margins into sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East. I'm not sure how that's in the best interest of children in our country and our local authorities.
Can I ask you about student loans? Because this is something that we've been covering on the programme. And honestly, I have been quite shocked to hear from students who are trying to do the right thing, enter the jobs market, paying hundreds of pounds a month to their student loans, and then the debt goes up, not down. I mean, I find it something that's quite hard to get my head around. And this is because these Plan 2 loans, you're charged inflation, and then you're also charged up to 3% interest on top of that. They were brought in under the coalition government, so the Lib Dems had a role in this as well. Is that something that you regret?
So look, Sophie, we paid a heavy political price for increasing tuition fees when we had said that we wouldn't. We've paid the price for that. What happened after we left government is we saw the thresholds for repayments decreased and interest rates increased.
Plan 2 loans were introduced in 2012, right?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
You were in government
the repayment
then, correct?
Yes, but the repayment terms...
So do you regret introducing Plan 2 loans?
No, what I'm saying is we tried to leave a system of repayment that was fair. That was changed by the Conservatives when they came in to govern on their own. What Liberal Democrats have proposed is that we would raise the repayment thresholds. That will put money immediately back in graduates' pockets, halve their loan repayments over the next 3 years if we unfreeze thresholds and allow those to rise in line with average earnings. And we are calling for a Royal Commission to look cross-party, because all parties have had a role to play in the current loan system. The current government is about to freeze thresholds that will hit low-earning graduates really, really hard. So we're saying a Royal Commission would come together to look longer term at how we can overhaul the system. We need to look at the interest rates, cut it down from this discredited RPI figure that is being used.
I understand that you're saying that the Conservatives later kind of changed the goalposts. But the Plan 2 loans, the theory of the Plan 2 loans was introduced in 2012 when the Lib Dems were in coalition government. Do you regret that?
Look, Nick Clegg has apologised for what happened on tuition.
Do you regret that? Do you regret it?
What, the Plan 2 loans?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, clearly it could have been designed better, and that's why we're coming forward with ideas to reform the system.
And do you take some responsibility for that design, given it happened in 2012 when you're in coalition?
All parties have been responsible. Conservative, Liberal Democrats,
and now Labour. I know, but I've asked the Labour government about it. I will ask the Conservatives about it. But right now, I'm asking the Lib Dems about it.
It doesn't work.
Regret it?
Yes, I've heard stories from my own constituents about how painful these Plan 2 loans are. What we're coming forward with is sensible, credible proposals to make the system fairer, and we need independent oversight so that no government, again, can come in and change the terms of a loan, because what we're seeing, first with Conservatives on their own, now with the Labour government, is using the student loan repayment system to fill black holes in the government spreadsheet. That can't be allowed to continue.
Thank you very much indeed. Nira Wilson talking to us there.
Thanks.
Good to have you on the programme. Let's take a check, shall we, on how the weather is doing.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, look, it's been a pretty bleak start to the year, hasn't it? But the good news is it's going to get a little bit warmer this week. But there will be some further rain. There will be strong winds at times as well. The heaviest rain is going to be in the northwest. Central and northern parts will see widespread blustery and locally heavy showers this morning, concentrated in the northeast. Southern Britain, though, will be mainly dry. Northern and central Britain will have showers into the afternoon, and the southwest will see cloud and more general, mainly light rain and drizzle taking over. East Anglia and the southeast do look mainly dry and sunny, though, and it's going to be very mild again, fairly windy.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Time for some sport. It's a bit sad, though. Racism in football raising its ugly head this weekend. There was quite a lot of it around. We'll talk about that. North London derby, so important for Arsenal. It was important for Spurs as well, but they absolutely got annihilated. So we'll have a look at some of those goals. Wilf, you should look happier. And the Winter Olympics.
Teasing an unhappy story initially.
Yeah. And the Winter Olympics finished last night. And there was some good results, really good results for Team GB.
It's coming up next.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
These are crazy.
It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat. It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island. The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre. The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin. Jerry, any comments on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial. Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris. Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland. Sky News, get the full story first.
Thank you for watching The Wrap every night of the week. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
This cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way. Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Lots of sport. Jackie's here. We'll start with Winter Olympics, are we? We're doing football.
No, we'll do the North London derby first, because
good.
you know I know that Wilfred's jet lagged and it will really properly cheer him up to see these goals again. But I think there's so many question marks over Arsenal and their bottle, and then can they see this title race through? It's spring, will they crumble as per usual? And they did against Wolves. So where were they at? And they were right back on it against Spurs, and I think that was a good message that they sent out. Eberechi Eze got a hat-trick last time out when the teams met in November. In fact, that's the last time he got a goal. Got 2 goals. He was the first one setting them on their way. Wilf, you had a question mark over the fact that yes, they dominated. That was the start of it, but there were mistakes. There were unforced errors.
Conceded straight away.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to see the Declan Rice mistake, which conceded the Spurs goal. But they got back on the horse. There were a couple of goals for Gyökeres, which was great for him, as well as the fact that the scoreline was the biggest away win that they've had at Spurs since the 70s, and there was a great save from David Raya as well. So, in all, a really good response. And I think Igor Tudor, sitting in the Spurs dugout thinking, really a lot bigger deal than I thought it was going to be. This job is much more difficult than perhaps I thought when I took it on, so lots to do. Sad weekend in terms of the amount of racism that was around. There were 4 players that complained. All about social media, emojis, messages, racist messages. Yesterday, Tolu Arakadari, who is the Wolves player, striker, who missed a penalty. Well, I say missed, it was saved. This is not it. This is not it. But if I carry on talking about it, perhaps we can show it. He missed a penalty, and he got absolute abuse on social media. They have complained to the social media companies. screenshotted what he received. There were three other players who received similar things over the weekend. He just said it's unbelievable to me that we've been playing in a time where people have so much freedom to communicate such racism without any consequences.
And it
it's
remembers...
absolutely correct. There's no consequence.
It reminds me a bit of when, the England players, Saka and Bennett, missed the penalties. And there was this huge furore and nothing's changed.
It never stops,
improved.
it never changes. Who are these people and why aren't their comments taken down before they can actually hit people's... I mean, there must be an algorithm. They must be able to find an algorithm that can take out monkey emojis or anything. There must be. Winter Olympics, it was Great Britain's best ever Winter Olympics. There were 5 medals, which matches what they've done before in Sochi and Pyeongchang. But there were 3 golds this time, which has never been done before. All in all, I think they were pretty delighted with the medal haul. It was a closing ceremony last night. And yesterday, Zoe Atkin, who is in the freestyle ski halfpipe, got a bronze medal, which her sister did a few years ago. But I watched that yesterday and went, that was a better run than the girl who came second. And I know not that much about freestyle halfpipe, but it was so good. She was so high, 5 metres out of the halfpipe, and yet you couldn't really understand the judging of it.
Jackie, I'm backing you here, 100%.
Did you watch it as well? And the chief executive of GB Snow Sport said, I was kind of stunned. The men don't go that high, some of them, and that's apparently a big part of it.
We're here for the conspiracies when they're in...
when they're pro.
I thought that was a bit suspicious.
We are sadly out of time. Jackie, thank you very much. We'll be back after this short break.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report, and this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
Sophie and Wilfred, good morning from the both of us. An awful lot to get to today.
Unions say a £4 billion package to make mainstream schools more inclusive for special educational needs pupils is only setting up schools to fail.
Tourists are left stranded in Mexico by a wave of cartel violence sparked by the killing of its most wanted drug boss.
British rising star from Hull beats the biggest names in Hollywood to the Best Actor prize at the BAFTAs. A great night for Robert Arameo.
We're outside Royal Lodge with the officers investigating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor expected to continue their search of the former prince's home.
And 4 years of war in Ukraine and the fight has become attritional. We joined the unit using drones to defend their homeland.
Hello, thanks for joining us. We're leading this morning with a generational overhaul of special educational needs that's being unveiled today. And at the heart of it is a change in philosophy that children with additional needs should, where possible, be taught in mainstream rather than specialist schools.
To do that, the government is announcing £4 billion of funding to help schools adapt and become more inclusive for children who need extra support. But it's a complex issue. The number of children who receive SEND support is rising, and with that, so is the bill. Sky's Anjan Pirbakos has been speaking to parents about the changes.
For many parents, the special educational needs system is already a battle. And getting an educational healthcare plan, which is a legally binding package outlining the requirements for the child, is even more challenging. One mother whose child has an EHCP says the right to challenge decisions made by the local authority is essential.
So for us as a family, we have an EHCP. We're currently in the process of appealing 3 sections of the EHCP. If we didn't have that right, then our son would obviously be essentially forced to attend mainstream school, which is unsuitable.
She says when her son was placed in a mainstream school, the impact on the entire family was immediate and severe.
It was horrible. It was the worst time of our life. As a family, you know, it nearly broke us. Grayson went from being a really happy child to screaming and refusing to leave the house.
The government wants to change the SEND system to help ease the processes. They say the reforms will transform support for children across England, with £4 billion over 3 years to make mainstream schools more inclusive with targeted early interventions, of which £1.6 billion will focus solely on SEND.
And what I'm determined to make happen is that children get support earlier, they get it when they need it, and that we don't wait until things have reached crisis point.
Critics argue that although this is a step in the right direction, they say it's not enough.
And while £1.6 billion for frontline services is a substantial investment, we have to remember that this is stretched across tens of thousands of schools, colleges and early years providers, and it is over 3 years. So it will not be enough to fund increased staffing in each setting. We need to understand the plan for how this funding will change SEND support for the better.
The government say the reforms will create a more inclusive system where support is available in every school and community. But for families already navigating SEND provision, the white paper represents a pivotal moment, one that could reshape how children access education, support and specialist services for generations to come. Anjan Pirbakos, Sky News.
Let's talk to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Cates, about this. And Sam, look, this is an issue that you've been, I guess, kind of having the kind of red alarm bells for quite some time now. What do you make of the final publication of what the government's going to do about it?
Look, as you say, I've been looking into this, and it's a really big moment for parents and children with special educational needs. First and foremost, it's a system that there's a cross-party consensus to say it has failed. But it is also a very big moment politically. Now, we've heard quite a lot of the direction of travel for the special educational needs reform, but I've got a really big caveat, Sophy, which is this. We haven't seen the tough detail. What we have seen, and this is the government learning lessons from last year's welfare revolt, is the outline of a system and a lot of good news that Labour MPs might want to hear. So you've heard about the extra spending that you mentioned in the headlines, the £4 billion, although that's £4 billion over 3 years, so slightly less than it might initially sound like. A desire to put people back in mainstream schools, and something a lot of Labour MPs will like, which is a clampdown on those private schools run by private equity because they can see the profit that you can make by charging the state £60,000–65,000 a year for each of those children. So that's what we've heard about. But what we haven't heard about is important as well. And particularly the goal, one of the goals of this system, as well as to improve outcomes, is to simply reduce the number of children that get that highest level of support, EHCPs as they're called, educational health care plans. And in order to do that, the government tell us at the moment they just want to make the alternative look more attractive. But really, there's going to be a moment where they get MPs to vote on reducing the rights of parents for their kids. And until we see the detail around that, you can't say what the rebellion is going to look like.
Can I just ask you on that? Because I asked the Minister about this, George Gold, like, are less people going to get the highest level of EHCP? Does that mean, like, on a practical level, that what kids get, some children get, is going to be reduced? And she kind of glossed over it a bit, I'll be totally honest. And she was again saying that the problem at the minute is kids who don't have really, really severe additional needs, who parents are saying there's no support, so they have to go through the HCP process, which for me, I don't know, she is kind of talking about kids on the lower end of the EHCP model, isn't she, right? Saying who might not have that legal protection.
Yeah, I've picked this up as well. A deliberate obfuscation by government, whether it was Bridget Phillipson yesterday on the Sunday round talking about the need to keep effective EHCPs, whatever that means.
What is this?
Or people last night in the education department telling me that all of this will be dealt with in the technical briefings. No, it isn't. This is the hard edge of the reform that people will judge whether they support or they reject it on. We're not idiots. We can see that they're not saying
Not
it.
all of us, anyway.
And getting this policy through on vibes and saying things that Labour MPs want to hear is not the be-all and end-all. But you can see why they're doing it, and that goes to the heart of why this is a political moment. Keir Starmer looked like he'd lost control of the Commons. They are going to legislate on this at the back end of this year. Look, you know, credit to them for doing this quite quickly. That means he's got to ensure that Labour MPs are on his side soon. So I don't think it's any surprise they are front-running the pro-Labour MP arguments in all of this.
It's funny because they might also have a bit more money to spend. I mean, we should say there was some good data last week, economic data. We have the spring statement next week. The very fact that it's approaching and we're not all talking about it every day highlights that it's less of a pressure point for them. But if there's a bit more money to spend and the party is feeling got a bit of a spring in its step, the backbench MPs, there might be pressure to change some of these policies.
There could be pressure for more money for special educational needs. The settlement is only for 3 years, as far as I can see. It's not clear what's new and above and beyond the last spending review. But we also heard from the Chancellor last week that there could be more money on defence. And that is just a different order of magnitude in terms of the sums needed. And I suspect any slack in the system could go there. But this is the Labour Party, and there is a large and healthy Labour majority, but that's a large number of Labour MPs, each with their own demands and hopes for funding. And there are just lots of areas, I think, which are problematic. So, yes, the news is a bit better for now. Rachel Reeves not under the pressure in 2026 that she was in 2025. But, you know, I'd hold back before you start writing the cheques too soon.
I'm not writing them. Asking about it. The other quick question I've got for you, obviously, by-election on Thursday. If Labour don't win it, is that actually already slightly priced in terms of what it means for Keir Starmer's authority, or would it be a big additional blow?
Look, it's a 13,000 majority that Labour are defending. For Reform, who were second place in the general election, to win, they need a bigger swing to them than Reform got when it won the by-election last year. So it's a pretty tall order. And what's interesting about Labour is that they are messaging to journalists that they think they're doing a pretty good job at the moment. They're squeezing Greens and Reform, the two competitor parties. But other people in Labour tell me things are a bit more difficult. Interesting that tactical voting websites that try to help left-leaning voters to decide where they're going to put their cross if they want to stop reform, they're actually backing the Greens. So I think it is far from clear what's going to happen, different mixed pictures. You know, are they just trying to get back some of those voters who are voting tactically for the Greens by messaging their positive hopes for the seat? It's unclear. I'm going up later today, so I'll be able to tell you in the next couple of days.
Well, we'll ask you about that. Great.
Looking forward to it, Sam. Great stuff. Thanks very much. Now, tomorrow, the full-scale war in Ukraine will enter its 5th year. It's become a grinding test of attrition for both sides, where movement on the map is measured in metres, not miles.
And at its heart is a small but menacing weapon, which has made daily life on the front line more of a challenge. Drones are reshaping how the war is fought. As our international correspondent Alex Rossi discovered, they can pose life-threatening danger at a moment's notice.
On the grounds, the conflict feels less like grand strategy and more like a slog to survive. These soldiers are tasked with defending one of the most heavily contested areas of the Donbass.
4 years in and fatigue is setting in. We are skirting around the front lines at the moment, and no longer can Ukrainian troops move in large formations. It's simply too dangerous. The threat of attack from drones is ever present.
Going forward means moving on foot, often across open ground. It's terrifying.
Quickly, there's an FPV. We're just heading to a new frontline position, and we've been warned that there is a first-person view drone, an attack drone in the sky above us. So the soldier we're with has told us to wait here and just try and take some cover.
The soldiers scan the skies and use handheld drone detectors. It's now heading over our position and hunting for a target. The radio alerts us. It's tracking back. The drone detector doesn't stop bleeping. Our movement has been spotted. We hear it before we see it.
What?
It's getting closer and closer. Another soldier joins the fight, and then relief as we see the drone fall from the sky. But we need to move quickly as more may come, or artillery could be called in on our position. A Ukrainian surveillance drone follows our progress as we get on quad bikes for the next leg of the journey to the village where the unit is stationed. Offering some protection, it is an eye in the sky. Speeding forward, smashed Ukrainian vehicles lie abandoned. A stark reminder of the danger we're heading into.
As drones have started to dominate the skies, Ukraine is now answering that threat with teams of drone hunters. And we're on our way now to meet some of them.
Inside their bunker where they live and plan their missions, they show us a drone they shot down that morning. It's cheap, mass-produced and deadly.
There are men working with pump-action shotguns because the drones fly at their lowest altitude there. That is within the effective range for a shotgun. But here, they fly higher and faster, so the Kalashnikov is the most effective weapon.
The drones here are relentless. It's a place where they circle their prey, and men do anything to survive. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Eastern Ukraine.
And again, well worth checking out Alex's full report on the Sky News website. The QR code's on the screen for you now. Now, Oman's foreign minister has confirmed another round of nuclear talks between the US and Iran will be held this week in Geneva.
Iran are signalling that they are prepared to work towards a deal, but they stand ready to fight if the US should launch strikes against them. Well, let's bring in our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, for us. Adam, what's your analysis of the latest when it comes to Iran?
I think we are heading to some kind of inflection point because there is such a huge American military build-up in the region, and the red lines still seem a long way apart. And the third factor in this is Israel is pushing the United States to really try and restrain Iran's build-up of ballistic missiles. So all these moving parts. The Americans' focus isn't really on missiles, it's on nuclear enrichment, something that, of course, has been debated for so many years around Iran. But at the moment, there are those in the intelligence establishment in America and indeed here in Israel who think that Iran is very close to getting to a position where it could be able to develop a nuclear weapon. There will be others, by the way, in this region who said, you've been saying that for years and it's never happened. So the Americans want to push a hard line. Donald Trump has talked about having zero enrichment. There are those who say, well, we could actually, maybe America might allow a very, very small amount, for instance, for medical isotope production. Iran has always said that it will not allow that its nuclear program is nothing to do with weapons, that it is legal under international restrictions, and that it is about power. It's invested billions into that program so far at a time when Iran is suffering real economic strife. So I think these talks on Thursday will be important. And remember, America has now one carrier group already here in the region, ready. Another, the Gerald R4, is already, I think, on the brink of being in position or not. And these are loaded with weapons. There is backup as well with refueling planes, with bombers. The Americans are ready to attack. We understand that there have been meetings over the weekend in the White House involving the most senior military and political officials, and that Donald Trump is weighing up his options. Interestingly, his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, gave an interview where he suggested that Mr. Trump is bemused at the fact that the Iranians haven't backed down. I suspect if he is, all he needs to do is to talk to some of his colleagues in the State Department, who will have seen over many, many years the skill with which the Iranians come to the negotiating table, their ability to be patient, to create circumstances for more and more meetings. The nuclear negotiations have been going on for an awfully long time. There is a mood that we are heading to a point where America could attack. There are those who are apparently advising Mr. Trump that he could do a quick strategic attack to try to force the minds of the Iranian regime. I think there will be others who say that that is probably going to be the precursor for a response from Iran, and that once America attacks once, then that is inevitably going to lead to some kind of conflict. And the Iranians have already said that if there is a war, it isn't going to be a simple one. It's not going to be, as we saw before, Iran and Israel trading missiles. They have promised a regional conflict, so the stakes really are high.
Adam, thanks so much for setting out for us. It's going to be a fascinating week. President Trump's State of the Union, of course, Tuesday, and then that next round of talks on Thursday in Geneva between the US and Iran. Adam Parsons there for us.
Coming up, we're going to be talking about student loans. It's something that we've been covering a lot on the show, and the situation that lots of graduates find themselves in. We're going to be talking to the Conservatives about whether they've got a plan to improve things.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. We've been talking a lot about student loans on the programme. The fact that because of the kind of interest rate, some graduates end up having an increasing burden of debt. We've got the Conservatives on now. Joining us this morning is the Shadow Policy Renewal Minister, Neil O'Brien. Good to have you on the programme. So the Conservatives are saying the plan to student loans are increasingly feeling like a scam. Who introduced the plan to loans?
So they came in when we were in government, and I don't think there is anything wrong with the principle that you should pay towards the cost of your university education. What is wrong, though, is where we now have a lot of young people going off to do courses that are not worthwhile ultimately, and the Institute for Fiscal Studies says that about 30% of people who graduated in the North, it turns out it wasn't worth it for them to go to university from an economic point of view. And what's also wrong is to then have interest rates that are so far above inflation that young people end up, they pay in loads of money off on their student loan, but they find that the debt has actually gone up because the interest rates are so high, and that is unfair, and that's what we'd get rid of.
I'm really keen to talk about some of your policy proposals, but I think before you almost have the right to do it, I think it is important to make the point that you, as the Conservatives, introduced Plan 2 loans. I mean, was that a mistake when you introduced them?
Look, we wouldn't be getting into this conversation and changing things if we thought they were the right thing to do. In fairness, they came in before I was even MP.
Yeah, I'm not blaming you personally for it, but, you know...
It was a low interest rate environment. But look, we think it's wrong, right? That's why we're trying to fix it.
Was it a mistake to have introduced them by the last Conservative government?
I think that...
Let's be open about it.
Yeah, I think the interest rate set up with them is wrong. It was a mistake, yeah. So that is why we are saying we would cut back on those low-value courses that are not actually helping young people, and we'd use that money, £2 billion a year, to get rid of real interest rates on Plan 2 loans so that young people can keep more of the money they're earning and they can have some hope of actually paying off these debts rather than just seeing them working, and actually the debt's going up, which is totally unfair.
I've been quite shocked, to be honest, to cover this on the programme. One of our guests, Eloise Burns, graduated in 2020 with £50,000 of debt. She's been making regular payments and now owns £57,000.
Yeah.
I mean, would you kind of apologise to students like Eloise for introducing these things in the first place?
I do more than just apologise. We've come up with a plan to fix the problem,
So would you apologise
Yes,
first?
absolutely, yeah. But apology is not enough. The government can apologise, but they're not going to fix the problem. We actually have a costed plan to fix it, and that involves getting rid of some of these degrees that are not worthwhile and using that money that taxpayers are currently wasting in a way that's not helping young people to get rid of these unfair interest rates. I've met loads of people like Eloise, so they say, I've paid off all this money this year, I've worked really hard, the government are taking 9% extra tax on top of everything else that they take, and actually my debt's gone up. I mean, you can't defend it. And the government, they said, by the way, Keir Starmer got elected to be Labour leader on a promise to get rid of tuition fees, and what did he do when he came in as Prime Minister? He increased them. And they said graduates would pay less, actually they're paying more, and that is not fair.
Can I talk to you about, you're saying there about getting rid of degrees that are not worth it, right? And I'm interested to know what kind of degrees you're talking about. A lot of people talk about creative arts. It takes me back to, being a teenager when my brother, who did economics and I did English literature, and he used to send me all these graphs showing that my degree was a complete, waste of time and that, I've got terrible prospects as an English literature grad. But it's like, the classic sibling thing. But has he got a point? Is that the point, how are you going to define what degrees are worthwhile?
Well, it's a great question. So we set up a thing when we were in government called the Longitudinal Educational Outcomes Database, and it tracks what people studied and then what they've gone on to earn and how often they're in employment and so on. And you can see in quite a detailed way from that which courses are the ones where people end up not paying back the money they borrowed.
So what courses are they, and are you going to get rid of them?
It varies by individual university and by individual courses. And there are some universities that don't do well overall, but they've got some good courses. You've got some good universities where there are bad courses. So it's quite specific to the individual course.
So can you give us some examples of the kind of thing that you don't think should be offered?
Look, you can look through this data set and you can see the specific ones. You can see that by certain types of subjects, to come straight to your point, do actually have worse earnings than others. I mean, you mentioned the creative arts. I think the Institute for Fiscal Studies calculated that only about 4% of them, 4 in 100, ended up being worth it from an economic point of view. And you can't see that data if you're a politician and take responsibility and say, that's fine, we're going to send all these young people who are choosing age 16 or 17 to go off and get, 70 grand worth of debt for a degree where we can see it's not worth it.
Can you give me the name of some degrees? Because we need to be real about it, right?
What they do is they aggregate. I'm not going to try and pick on individual institutions here, but you can go online and see the data for yourself, and I'm not going to pick on individual courses, but we can see there are certain types of institutions, certain types of courses where the earnings are just not high enough to justify these massive debts.
Can I just finally ask you about the reforms to special educational needs? It's something we've been covering a lot on the programme this morning. In principle, do you support what the government's doing?
In principle, there is nothing wrong with the government trying to control the growth of spending on special needs. I mean, we spent an extra £4 billion on special needs when we were in government. The budget has gone up and up and up. There's nothing wrong with them trying to control that spending. I am a bit worried when I saw the head of the National Association of Special Schools saying that she'd never been treated with such contempt as by Bridget Phillipson. I am a bit worried by that, and if the people who are looking after very vulnerable young people are worried, that kind of makes me a bit worried too. And the key here is it's fine for them to want to save some money, but we've just got to do it in such a way that it's not the Treasury making some short-term savings in a way that actually sets up bigger problems in the longer term. So we haven't seen any of the details of this. We haven't seen exactly how it is that they are planning to save the money. There's some talk about a banding system, but with no actual numbers on it. And so far, all you've heard is the government saying, oh, here's all the nice things about it. But at 11 o'clock, they'll actually publish it and we'll see what the actual plan is. We'll have to see whether that is a fair plan or not.
Yeah, have to look at the detail when it comes out. Neil O'Brien, thank you very much for being on the programme. Coming up, we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's trade tariff policy. There's been an awful lot of movement over the last few days, and some of it directly affects the UK. We'll discuss.
Welcome back. Donald Trump has doubled down on his tariff policy, announcing a 15% rate globally. That's off the back of the US Supreme Court's ruling that the US president's methods were unlawful, or at least a large part of his tariffs have been unlawful. That decision came out on Friday. Let's speak now to Olaf Gill, the European Commission spokesperson for trade. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. What is the EU's sort of view on that Supreme Court decision on Friday?
Good morning, and thanks for having me on. I would say that our approach here is really trying to fully understand what precisely is going on the other side of the Atlantic. The Supreme Court ruling happened on Friday. It ruled large parts of the legal base for the Trump tariffs to be to have no legal basis, to be illegal, effectively. Since then, our political interlocutors on the EU side have been in touch with their American counterparts. The European Union Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič has been in touch with his counterpart, the US Trade Representative Jemison Greer. What we're essentially trying to understand here is what replacement legal base the Trump administration proposes to put in place in order to maintain its tariffs, which is what we understand is their priority. And once that is clear, we will make a sort of informed assessment on our side on next steps. But we're not going to act rashly. We're going to wait to see what happens. There's a lot of confusion and instability on the other side, and it's really for them to resolve that before we take any steps on our side.
Is your general view that the deal you were striking with the US in the face of what may well have turned out to have been illegal tariffs, but nonetheless you reached a deal or very close to reaching a deal and it needed final ratification, is it that that deal should stand?
Look, there are a few things to keep in mind here. The first is that from the European Union's perspective, we've said from the get-go here that we believe tariffs are taxes. They do no good to anyone, and ultimately their cost is borne by companies and consumers. Recent comprehensive studies have shown that to be the case as regards the Trump tariffs. In other words, the cost of them is being borne by the American taxpayer, which in our estimation shows the futility of putting them in place in the first instance. What we have as the European Union been striving to maintain in transatlantic trade and investment is stability, predictability, and that remains our priority. Until and unless we have a clear understanding that the terms of our agreement with the US are no longer valid, we will continue to implement the commitments on our side.
Forgive me for asking this, but if you're so clear that tariffs are taxes and they're bad, why does the EU impose them on other countries?
Well, the EU doesn't impose them on other countries. The EU has the widest network of free trade agreements of any global power. And with those free trade agreements, we reduce, or in some cases eliminate tariffs, the better that we can have free trade, healthy economic relations with partners around the world, to generate economic opportunities for both sides, to have diversification of trade in general. So the premise of your question is a bit
So you have no tariffs. So I'm wrong on that. You have absolutely no tariffs on other countries.
Of course, we have some tariffs in place, but the point is that
so if they're bad tariffs, why do you have them in place?
The tariffs we have in place conform to World Trade Organization law. They are designed to be very sort of calibrated so that they're sector by sector. But in general, our tariffs are low, which is why countries around the world are lining up to do trade deals with us. We recently signed one with Mercosur, with India. We're in the process of getting to endgame with Australia, with the UAE. As I mentioned, we have the largest network of free trade agreements in the world, 46 deals with 78 countries. It's not by accident. It's because when you deal with the EU, you're dealing with someone who sticks to their word, who is stable and predictable and all those other boring words, but that's the basis for successful trade and doing business, and we're the brand leader in that sense.
Listen, I totally get the haphazard actions we're seeing from the US don't represent the carefully, well-planned way that the EU does things. But to just criticise tariffs, which maybe you want to retract, and then still have them, even if your excuse is you do it sector by sector as opposed to country by country, and you might do it in a thoughtful way, is a little bit rich, that's all. You do have tariffs. They're quite high, I think, for agriculture. You do still have them for autos, I think, at 10%. And obviously, you're talking to a country in the UK that used to have free trade and doesn't anymore with the EU.
I repeat, why are all these countries around the world lining up to do trade deals with the EU? Because they know that we are a stable and reliable partner, because we know that in reaching agreements with us, they will achieve win-win outcomes that will deliver trade and investment for them as well as us. Yes, it's true that we have certain levels of tariffs on the sectors you mentioned, but if you look at the overall applicability of tariffs as they relate to the EU, what we offer is very low or sometimes no tariff exchanges, and that's very attractive to trading partners, and the economic stats bear that out.
Really interesting. Good to have you on, and just had to pick you up on that point as opposed to it being the plan, but thanks so much for joining us.
Many thanks.
Now, it was the BAFTAs last night, and one battle after another was the big winner. They got 6 awards, including Best Film and Best Director. But the story most are talking about is the British Risings. Actually, there's a British and an Irish Rising star.
Yeah, British and
we should
Irish
say both of
stars,
them.
yeah. 2 that we're talking about this morning.
Particularly after that last conversation. British Rising star from Hull, who beat the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet to win Best Actor. That's Robert Arameo.
And a big win for Jessie Buckley as well, who won Best Actress for her portrayal as Shakespeare's wife in Hamnet, the first Irish woman to win that award. I think lots of people are now eyeing up if she can do the same at the Oscars. Katie Spencer's got all the highlights.
Robert Arameo from I Swear.
This was BAFTA's big surprise. Hugging his dad, relative unknown Robert Arameo winning over A-listers Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet for Best Actor.
I absolutely can't believe this. I can't believe that I'm looking at people like you and I'm in the same category of you. Never mind that I'm stood here.
It's called Tourette syndrome. I say things that I shouldn't. What can you do? Do you want to come in for something to eat, John?
BAFTA has form for going its own way. It was Arameo's performance in this film, I Swear, about Tourette's, that stopped critics in their tracks. The win, leaving the young actor stunned.
When I was in school, Ethan Hawke came in to speak to us at Juilliard, and he gave an amazing talk on longevity as an actor, about protecting your instrument and avoiding self-destructive behaviours. And it had a great impact on everyone in that room. So to be in this category with you tonight is incredible.
Watched on by the royals, the ceremony perhaps a welcome distraction for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Of course, on this side of the pond, we do things a little differently. Instead of champagne...
How do you like the idea of an Oaty Hobnob flapjack?
Sounds fantastic.
From biscuits to cinematic brilliance, Jessie Buckley, the first Irish actor to win Best Actress, all for her role as a grieving mother in Hamnet.
I'd like to share this with my daughter, who's been with me since she was 6 weeks old on the road with this. It's the best role of my life, being your mom, and I promise to continue to be disobedient so that you can belong to a world in all your mad, complex wildness.
But this was also a night where the big American films rose to the top. Vampire horror Sinners taking home 3 awards, including one for its British star, Wunmi Mosaku.
I found a part of myself in Annie, a part of my hopes, my ancestral power and connection, parts of myself I thought I'd lost or tried to dim as an immigrant trying to fit in.
But it was one battle after another that was victorious. Filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson winning so many he dropped this one for writing.
Rise and shine.
Bat an eyelash.
Good morning.
There are no hands on the clock.
Why?
Because they're not needed.
Racking up 6 awards in total, One Battle is a film authority is seen as unpredictable, militarised, with the power to destabilise entire neighbourhoods.
I know what freedom is. It's no fear. So let's keep making things without fear. It's a good idea. See you at the bar.
A sentiment worth celebrating. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, let's speak about the BAFTAs in more detail. We're delighted to be joined by the film, TV and culture critic Ashanti Omkar. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What was the standout story of the evening? Was it Arameo winning Best Actor?
It was for me. I was really delighted that British voters, and this is the BAFTAs, have gone for British actor. It felt great.
And because we were just discussing this, he actually can't now repeat that success at the Oscars. He's not nominated for Best Actor. So it gives you quite a kind of clear that the British aspect in that kind of really came through, even just to get nominated.
It really did. And for the public to vote for him in the EE Rising Star Award is a fantastic thing, because we now know that not just the voters have voted for him, but also the British public have said he's the standout of the year. That really felt great for the film, I swear, as well as for him.
And a great night for Jessie Buckley as well, right? The Irish actress.
Absolutely. She totally deserved it. She's been the front runner for the BAFTAs and the Oscars. And we were waiting for this result. And here we are with the result. It feels great. She deserves it.
In terms of the overall film winner, what was the main takeaway?
Well, One Battle After Another has been the awards voters' favourite. It has been a divisive film, so a lot of audiences that I've met have said they haven't quite liked it. They felt it was a little bit like Marmite. Some people have loved it, really? Some people have hated it, but awards voters have loved it.
You loved it, didn't you?
I thought it was really good, yeah. I think it's the only one I've seen of the nominees, but I thought it was excellent, yeah.
I personally would have loved Sinners to also make big wins, but I felt like the BAFTAs this year have had a nice spread of winners. You know, Hamnet has had its due, Sinners has had its due, and so has One Battle After Another. And these were the three big favourites of the season.
Can I ask you about women and these award ceremonies? Because it feels to me like often, obviously, a woman wins Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, because they have to. But in some of the other big categories, particularly Best Director, women just don't do very well. And, you know, again, we saw, you know, a great female director not get the award, lose out. Is there a bit of a sexism problem?
It's a very difficult one to say, because 8,300 people are voting for these. So you're looking at it, and the gender balance in BAFTA voters is quite good, actually. They've been working very hard. The BAFTA team have worked really hard to get voters in a good spread when it comes to diversity and gender balance. Chloe Zhao definitely deserved to win. It would have been lovely. She's an Oscar-winning director already.
She's the Hamnet director.
Hamnet director, Chloe Zhao, and she's a fantastic director. But in this instance, I guess One Battle After Another, the way the film has been made, the way it's very political and it suits the scenario, this father-daughter story, similar to Hamnet in some ways, where it's a father and son story. This one is a father and daughter story, and it really has resonated with people. And the way Paul Thomas Anderson, who is a favourite amongst, you know, cineasts and cinephiles and voters, I am not surprised that he's walked away with so many prizes.
So there's 8,300 people vote for the BAFTAs. How does that compare to how many people vote for the Oscars? Is it higher or lower?
It's higher. It's around 11,000, I believe, at the Oscars.
I can't believe this.
Yeah, it's a big pool. It's a big pool of voters, isn't it?
Yes.
And are all votes weighted equally?
Yes, yes. They have a very rigorous process. This is all, you know, due diligence is done. There are juries in place also. So it's really interesting. But the final vote goes down to those voters. So once everything is streamlined to the final 5 films, for example, we go in. I'm a voter myself, and I go in. And it does take a lot, because you've spent a whole year watching hundreds of films.
Who do you vote for then? God.
I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say, but let me just say that Sinners was my
It's just the same as in the by-election. You're not allowed to ask our guests.
Oh, we've got to go there, haven't we? We're in Purda, probably.
No, but absolutely. I am really delighted to see this spread of winners. You know, it's great. Akinola Davis Jr. winning that breakthrough was fantastic also, with My Father's Shadow. It's a film I can highly recommend to both of you to see. It transports you to Nigeria, to the time he was a child. I grew up in Nigeria myself, so I had a big connection to that movie.
I reckon Ashanti voted for that one.
I think so.
This was a jury vote, actually, for that particular... The category that he won in was not something I had a say in.
So there you go. She didn't give anything away.
Didn't give anything away. Thank you so much for joining us.
Professional.
My pleasure indeed. Thank you.
Let's have a look, shall we, at how the weather is shaping up. Better weather ahead. We're crossing our fingers.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
It'll be mild this week, but expect further rain and strong winds at times, with the heaviest rain in the northwest. Central and northern parts will see widespread blustery and locally heavy showers this morning, concentrated in the northwest, while southern Britain will be mainly dry. Northern and central Britain will have showers into the afternoon, while the southwest will see cloud and more general, mainly light rain and drizzle taking over. East Anglia and the southeast look mainly dry and sunny. It'll be very mild again and fairly windy.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Next up, Jackie's got the sport.
I have. It was the end of the Winter Olympics last night, so we'll have a look at that. Hopefully we'll get to the closing ceremony pictures that we haven't managed to show so far. Usual stuff, though. Glitz, fireworks, all that. Flags. And Arsenal answering a few questions about their mentality for the title fight with a 4-1 victory over Spurs. So we'll bring you a couple of goals from that. No crying Spurs fans. There's quite a lot of those on social media. I don't know if you've seen them, but a lot of work to do there.
Worried about their relegation battle to come.
Yeah, very, very possibly. We'll talk about that as well and bring you some other football too.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. Time for the sport. And what are we going to kick off with, Jay?
Well, just for you, Wilf, we're going to kick off with Arsenal, but we would have anyway, with the 4-1 victory over Spurs yesterday. And so many questions being asked about Arsenal's, well, they call it minerals, which I never really quite know what that means, for the title. You know, do they have them? Do they have what it takes to sort of grind it out and drag themselves over the line. And a lot of people, after they dropped points at Wolves in the week, thought, no, they don't. They're really, really wobbling. It's spring, Arsenal wobble. It's like taxes. It's guaranteed. But they literally bounced back so well against Spurs. It was kind of like, well, what are you worried about? Eberechi Eze got a hat-trick last time, started the ball rolling with a goal at the Spurs Stadium that really got it rocking. But then they made a mistake, and Declan Rice really owned the mistake. It was his mistake, and they conceded a goal. So every Arsenal fan in there thought, my goodness, here we go. But then came 3 more goals. Victor Gyökeres was really good yesterday. He got a couple of goals. There was another goal for Eber as well. 4-1 in the end, fairly comprehensive. And you were talking earlier, there were mistakes, though. You know,
yeah, I definitely.
You've got to cut mistakes.
I think 4-1 makes it look like we're all done and dusted.
Flattering, yeah.
When we went 2-1 up, we also conceded straight afterwards, and it was disallowed, which was quite generous.
Yeah, but have a look at this from David Raya. A really good save, and this was at 3-1, so that could have been 3-2 if he hadn't saved it, and that would have been a very different complexion, and we have a very, very different conversation possibly this morning. But anyway, they want lots and lots for the new Spurs manager, Tudor, to consider this morning, no doubt, when he goes back to training. We should mention as well, Forest have got a new manager. They put up a really good performance in Vitor Pereira's first match in charge in the Premier League. There was one in the week in Europe, but in the Premier League, really good performance, and lost to Liverpool, who scored in the 97th minute.
97.
Which I think,
wow.
you know, Liverpool would say they've not had the rub of the green lately, but this definitely was the rub of the green. Alexis McAllister with the goal. He'd had one disallowed earlier in the match, but that one did count. So 1-0, 97th minute. Jamie Carragher said it's one of the biggest robberies I've seen in the Premier League this season. and he's from Liverpool, so, I mean, it must be something. Also, on a sad note, lots of racism around for 4 footballers who complained about it on social media this weekend. Not good enough, and something needs to be done by the social media companies to stop these comments actually reaching the accounts of these players. But also last night, the Olympics. I don't know if you've been following the Olympics while you were away. I was away too, but I was kind of really glued.
Yeah,
that is so true.
Which I hadn't realised is basically always the case. I was looking into that.
Well, they are born on skis.
I know, I get that.
Or on snow, or on ice.
But they're, for the population, you know,
it's amazing.
medals per capita is pretty impressive.
I've been hooked on it, the whole lot, I have to say. I've loved it. It's been great.
Sucked into the curling, don't you? Anyway, it finished last night. But there was a little bit of controversy in the end, because Zoe Atkin, I don't know if you watched it, half-pipe free ski final. She is the world champion. She kind of led at the start. Then Eileen Gu, who's the superstar of the Games and really of winter sports, won it. She put down this fantastic run, absolutely nailed it. If you don't know her, Eileen Gu, she is American, she's all kind of Californian, goes to Stanford, but she races for China because her mother is Chinese. She's an amazing brain, she's an amazing competitor, and she's the 4th highest paid female athlete in the world, behind 3 tennis players.
Wait, is that right?
And by far the highest paid winter athlete. So she got the gold. But Zoe Atkin could have been up there challenging her because she flies so high out of the pipe, and they really mark that. Well, at least they should do. So Zoe Atkin put down a fantastic 3rd run, 5 metres and more over the top of the pipe, which is higher than a lot of the men go. And in came the scores, and it was only good enough for 3rd. And I think, you know, the chief executive of GB Snowsport raised eyes and said, well, we kind of thought she was going to get the silver there. It was good enough for silver, but a Chinese rider got the silver medal. So
robbery.
I know it's a conspiracy theory, but I'm
here for it, Jackie.
I watched it and went, that doesn't seem fair.
Let's start the investigation now.
What was, so the closing ceremony was last night?
Closing ceremony was last night.
What did they do for that? Big fondue?
Oh, you know, this. They did this. Okay. 5 medals. Best ever Olympics for Team GB with 3 goals. They were very happy.
Lovely stuff. Congrats to everyone involved. We're out of time. Thanks, Jackie. See you tomorrow.